It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. I'm joined by a great panel. Alex Kantrowitz is here from the Big Technology Podcast, Larry Magid from Larry's World, and of course, Dan Patterson of CBS News. Lots to talk about. Apple is backing down on its CSAM plans. We'll talk about what that means and whether they might change their plan entirely. Windows 11 broken by injecting ads. We've got a fix. How do you feel about editing the registry? And a seemingly normal lightning cable that can spy on everything you type. It's all coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 839, recorded Sunday, September 5th, 2021. A faster horse. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Udacity. Gain in-demand tech skills in as little as 3 months with Udacity's part-time online tech courses. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with the code TWIT75. Limited time offer. And by ExpressVPN. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like driving without car insurance. Why take the risk? Protect yourself with the VPN that I use and trust. Use my link expressvpn.com/twit today and get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. And by Molecule. Molecule is reimagining the future of clean air, starting with the air purifier. For a limited time, save up to $120 on Molecule air purifiers by visiting molecule.com and using the promo code TWIT at checkout. Enjoy free shipping and a 30-day home trial on your order. And by Modern Finance. Are NFTs here for the long haul? Which cryptocurrency is a fad? How does decentralized finance work? Modern Finance Podcast, hosted by Kevin Rose, looks to answer these questions and many more about the investment marketplace. Download and subscribe to Modern Finance wherever you listen to podcasts and get ahead of the future of finance. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news with a panel of fabulous tech journalists. Alex Kantrowitz is back from the Big Technology Podcast and his Big Technology newsletter. Great to see you, Alex, author of Always Day One. Kara Swisher says, buy this book. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Leo. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Newly moved to the Big Apple.
That's right. I went cross-country, moved from San Francisco to New York, and finally decided it was time to live on my own and ditch the roommates. So a big moment in life.
Oh, that is. It's a big moment in every boy's life.
That's right. You know, I could have lived with roommates forever, I think, but I had a friend visit, look around and be like, you can't keep doing this.
You're grown up now. You're over 20. You should have your own place.
That's right.
That's fun. Are you in Manhattan or are you in Brooklyn or?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn, right underneath the Barclays Center. So,
nice.
I'm a lifelong Knicks fan, but I plan to attend a bunch of Nets games this year.
Yeah, there you go. It's just down the street.
That's right. Also
moving back to New York. I say back because Dan Patterson fled New York during COVID, but he's back, which is a good sign for all of us. Technology reporter at CBS. Hi, Dan.
Hey, well, we just did part-time upstate and then part-time in the city.
Nice.
But, my wife and I both do this live video thing, and it was in 700 square feet, a little challenging in New York City.
Yeah, no kidding. Both you and...
but it is great to be back.
Both you and Alex moved back just in time for the flood.
Yeah, we had a hurricane 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's right.
The ground was saturated, totally saturated. Yeah, and then this one, I think this one was bad, but it wouldn't have been nearly as bad without the prior one. And our meteorologists keep saying climate change is not coming; it's here.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you could debate that. I don't. We still have people, viewers of these shows, which surprises me, saying, "Oh, it's a hoax." Yeah.
When is it going to stop being as you want? But science doesn't care about debates.
When is it going to stop being a hoax? Oh, maybe when the whole place burns to the ground. I don't know. We've got our own problems out here in the West. That's where Larry Magid is. Good to see you, Larry, from connectsafely.org.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame we can't hang out in Petaluma like we did last time.
Next time. I know.
Next time, hopefully.
Yeah, there was this brief period of time when everything seemed like it was getting back to normal. Larry was sitting right next to me. Now we're back remote.
Now we're back.
Because Delta. Oh, well. This has not become the apocalypse show, so we'll pretend something wonderful is going on. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, how about this? Apple says, oh, never mind. We spent many hours talking about Apple's child sexual abuse material detection. Larry, I should actually start with you because you are very active in protecting children online. Apple, as everybody knows, because we talked about it ad nauseum, was going to use the database from NCMEC. You work closely with NCMEC, the National Center.
I was on their board for 20 years.
Yeah, missing exploited children. They're an organization started and funded by the government, but non-governmental. They're a nonprofit. Right. But they do maintain, and they're the only place legally allowed to maintain, a database of child sexual abuse material. They create a fingerprint hash that almost everybody uses to detect it on their own servers. So they don't have to send the images around, just the fingerprint. And Google, Microsoft, Facebook, everybody uses this to detect it. Apple's proposal was a little different. Instead of scanning right there on iCloud, as everybody else does, Apple wanted to scan the images on their way to iCloud.
Yeah.
In other words, put the scanner on your phone. And I don't know if that was what triggered people, but there was something about this sacrosanct phone that made people say, no, Apple. And Apple's, I think, listening.
Might have been all those ads Apple ran that said what happens in your phone stays in your phone.
Yeah, Apple might have.
That could have been why people thought this about their iPhone.
Yeah, I think you're right. They created expectations. And of course, Apple fought the good fight with the FBI around the time when the FBI wanted to break their encryption around the San Bernardino shooter. The thing but I think Apple really had a bad messaging over this. I mean, part of the problem is the kind of stuff that Apple would have reported to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I don't want to go into it on this show, but this is not pictures of topless 17-year-olds.
Oh, no, it's horrible.
Really horrible stuff.
We can stipulate that. Yeah. And I think it's important, and I'm going to let you talk in a second, but I think it's important to say right up front, nobody who was opposed to this was in favor of this imagery, child pornography, pederasty of any kind. Nobody was saying that. But there is also this notion that if a company wants to do something intrusive, they wrap it in, think of the children or terrorism, they wrap it in these hot button subjects, so that deflects criticism. Right. So I just want to say that up front. Nobody's proposing that this stuff should exist. Everybody says, yes, it's a good idea to come up with stuff. In fact, I'm going to go a step farther. I don't think anybody is mad at Facebook or Microsoft or Google for doing the same thing on their cloud servers. In fact, Google does it with Gmail attachments. And nobody said boo about that.
Right. And in fact, they're obligated. If it shows up on their servers, and if their algorithm matching software, which by the way was developed by Microsoft, it's called PhotoDNI, if it spots it or if it gets a hit against the NCMEC database, then they are legally obligated to report it to the cyber tip line, which is operated by the National Center. And I think that's a good model. I think part of Apple's problem is, again, on one hand, I think they were thinking that by doing this on the device, they were actually making for greater privacy for their users, but it really confused the matter and created a backlash, which was probably fair. I'm not saying it's unfair, but it was unfortunate because they were trying to do the right thing.
You say the benefits, you actually wrote an article about this last month, outweigh the risks. But has your mind been changed in the 3 weeks since by the conversation?
To some extent, I think if I were to rewrite that article today, I would say they need to figure out a way to reduce the risks and, to enhance the benefits. Because I think, again, if they move it to the iCloud server and stop scanning on the phone, then I would say the risks are very well under control.
And I don't think anybody would object to that because this is what everybody does.
Yeah. I was just trying to make the point that there's a really good reason to do this. And I also made the point that there are always risks in any form of surveillance. Look, I've got a doorbell camera. I think it has great benefits, but does that mean that if you decide to walk in front of my house with somebody you shouldn't be with, that your privacy could be invaded? Absolutely. And so we have to figure out all of these trade-offs. in the world that we live in right now.
Apple obviously feeling the heat. They were planning to roll this out with iOS 15, which I'm going to guess would have rolled out this month. I think that's pretty safe. Have decided to delay it. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to wait until the heat cools off and then do it, or if they want to find a better way to do it. But it'd be my guess that what Apple did not want to do what you suggested, Larry, because ultimately they'd like to have end-to-end encryption on iCloud so that they can avoid subpoenas from law enforcement in this country and other countries. They can avoid that whole thing by putting end-to-end encryption on iCloud, which means the only way they could find those images is on their way in or on their way out.
Yeah. And by the way, encryption is, having been on the board of the National Center, most of my colleagues were very anti-encryption. And I argued that encryption actually protects children along with everyone else, so that there are pros and cons from the safety standpoint. Forget other issues. From a safety standpoint, there are advantages to encryption as well as some risks that it brings in, or at least hamperings of law enforcement.
And it very well could be that. I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
That Apple's rationale was based on this kind of reductionist, lack of nuance conversation that has happened with their peers, particularly Facebook, and their peers also acquire the language around safety and encryption to talk about how your content is protected. But there really has been an unnuanced debate about this exact topic, and many of Apple's peers have kind of confused it and harmed public trust. So it could have been that Apple was maybe trying to do exactly what you suggested. I don't know, but I think it could have been that they're looking for a simpler solution.
Yeah, I'm not sure who you're talking about. So Facebook is getting a lot of flack from law enforcement and many in the child safety community. Not me, but others.
I was talking about Facebook specifically.
Yeah.
Well, Facebook and Google and anyone who's doing encryption is bound to get flack from law enforcement and some people in child protection. And if they don't do it, they're going to get flack from everybody else.
But Facebook reported more than 20 million images matching the NCMEC database in 2020. Yeah. Apple reported 256. 20 million from Facebook, 256 from Apple. I think that number alone was one of the reasons Apple said, we got to do something. This does not look good, if nothing else. The optics are bad.
The main question here, from my perspective, is where's the consistency for Apple? So if we look back to the time where the company had the showdown with the FBI over the San Bernardino terrorists' phone, the key wasn't, should we protect this, this data that could potentially lead us to solve like what might be, a terrorist network operating in the U.S. or foil the next attack. Apple's argument was, if we are to create this key, we are going to create this opportunity for it to be used in the future for things that are not this specific. We're going to open the door. So therefore, we're not touching this at all. And while this is a valiant attempt, it doesn't sync with the same logic they had back with the FBI case, where like they're not going to allow anything to happen on device because you don't know what it's going to be used for next. And I think
was
that's
exactly
where they really get into trouble.
What the EFF and many experts were worried about with Apple's scanning on the phone is that then the government could come to Apple and said, well, by the way, we'd also like you to find image of gay kissing or something if it's Saudi Arabia. And as a result, that would be problematic. There were other issues as well. In fact, one of the things Apple seems to cite is that some of the there were a lot of technologists using these neural hashes who said, you're going to have a problem. It's not that accurate. The Apple said specifically, we want to make improvements before releasing these critically important child safety features. It's interesting. NCMEC warned Apple at the very beginning. This was another thing that lit a bit of a fire, saying you're going to hear, what was it, Larry, shrieking commentators decrying what you're doing. Pay no attention to them.
Well, that may have been a mistake at NCMEC. Again,
no kidding.
I stepped down from the board a year ago, so I can't take any responsibility. But there are people who in NCMEC who get it, and there are people who don't. And the ones who get it understand that we cannot use child protection as an excuse for surveillance. In 2012, I was supposed to give 2 speeches in Moscow. And I gave my first speech to a group of basically NGOs where I argued that you cannot combine child protection or child pornography with other harms. And that was exactly what Putin and his team were doing.
It's worse than anything else is what you're saying.
Yeah. You've got to just focus on that. But Putin and company created this law that lumped all of these things, terrorism, child pornography, extremism, into one law. And guess what? The next speech I was supposed to give, suddenly they ran out of time right before I was about to speak. And that was at a big government televised event. So they didn't like my message, clearly.
Wow, that's pretty blatant.
Yep, very blatant.
But so you're making the point that Apple's running and by the way, Apple may back down at this point or delay it, but by having announced that they can do it, they've already opened the door to this.
Yeah.
Because in effect, you've said, well, we could do it, and Russia or Saudi Arabia or China could use that as, well, we know you can do it, so do it.
It also makes you wonder what's actually behind the privacy messaging that Apple's been pushing at us for the last, few years. Is this actually a message based off of principles and values, or is it a convenient marketing message to help position the iPhone against Facebook and the iPhone against Android? And that's why I brought up consistency earlier. If you're consistent with it, we can say, okay, these are your values. But if you say privacy for this, but not for that, and that's what Apple stands for, privacy, then you have to start scratching your head and you say, maybe this company isn't as, devoted to privacy as a value as we once thought. Now, of course, Leo, you mentioned that this is not something that anybody would, want. We wouldn't want these images out there at all.
Well, that's the question. Can we have privacy and block child pornography at the same time?
Well, you can have you can have full safety in a society and be under authoritarian rule, and it's always a balance of how much safety do you want and how authoritarian do you want to be.
Exactly.
And so this is the decision that Apple made.
This exact same debate is raging internally with Apple right now with their own employees. And they've had significant issues with the Apple II movement. Cher Scarlett coming forward over the last couple of weeks and talking about how, look, there can be privacy for some things and security for some things at Apple. In fact, she told me, we have privacy and security for our devices and our products, but not our people. Our people are exposed if they speak out against Apple. And I think that this, Alex, consistency is the exact same at the core, the exact same argument that's happening with Apple right now with their own employees.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's a fascinating moment for Apple because, from my understanding, there have been departments inside the company that have deployed Slack. And when you put these messaging apps inside a company, all these things that you used to have in terms of culture, whether it was top-down leadership or silos like Apple has had, or a culture where you don't ask questions to people above you, which Apple has had, that falls by the wayside. So I think we're entering an extremely fascinating moment for this company where we see whether it can maintain this siloed, secretive culture, one that doesn't empower employees to speak up, unlike Facebook and Google, or whether, Apple, shuts down Slack and says, we're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing, and how that impacts employee morale. So the cat's been let out of the bag, and I kind of think it's an exciting moment because their culture did need to be tested, and I'm glad to see that we're starting to see the beginning of that.
You're probably referring to the fact that Apple, which uses Slack for internal messaging, banned a Slack channel that was talking about pay equity, saying we don't allow personal conversations on our business Slack. Meanwhile, there's a dogs channel and others that they did not ban. So they ban it, they used a completely pathetic excuse for doing so. Apple employees have Slack channels to discuss hashtag fun dogs, more than 5,000 members, hashtag gaming, 3,000 members. There's a 2,000 member dad jokes channel, but don't have a channel discussing pay equity.
In partial defense of Apple, not around the pay equity issue, but around the whole issue of encryption and data collection, the entire safety community that I'm very much part of deals with nuances. So, for example, as an ACLU member, I feel very, very strongly about free speech, but I also feel very strongly about hate speech and about misinformation.
Of course, and the ACLU is famous for defending the Skokie, Illinois Nazis.
Exactly. But these are competing. In other words, there are competing rights or competing issues that, aside from any commercial questions, aside from the fact whether these are greedy corporations trying to extract every possible penny, these companies, and I can't speak so much for Apple because they're not one of our partners, but certainly Facebook, Twitter, Google, companies we do work with, Microsoft, they do struggle with these questions of how do we balance these competing rights, right of safety,
the difference is,
right of speech, et cetera.
As Alex has pointed out, they don't have big advertisements saying what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone.
Well, exactly, that's true too.
Apple's kind of walked into this buzzsaw, and so let me ask you, Larry: is it compatible, privacy of your device and protecting against child sexual abuse material? Are those? I understand you're saying it's nuanced. You have to weigh them.
Art.
But they seem like they're at direct odds. I mean, what I do on my phone is private. It's my personal phone. And people are, this is the part of the problem is this is a new device. It's a new concept that I would store such personal stuff on a device that's always connected to the internet, has a microphone, a camera, and a GPS is right there, this kind of paradox.
They are in conflict, but it's not as if that law enforcement has no resources at all. I mean, there's metadata, for example, which can be used. I mean, it's not unlike the whole wiretapping rules. I mean, what you can access and what you can't. And law enforcement, I'm sure if they could, would love to have a complete access to every device in the world. They don't, but they still have tools that they can use to bust bad guys. And it's just going to, it's going to be harder for them, not because we want to make their job harder, but because we want to, as much as possible, protect the rights of citizens.
Balance privacy. This is what the Constitution's all about. Balance privacy, because the founders were concerned about the King of England going into their home and looking for stuff. That's why there's a Fourth Amendment, and they balance this need for law enforcement versus this need and constitutional right, not just need, but a right to privacy of your personal effects. And I guess the courts can weigh in on this. That's certainly part of their job. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on this. No one's supporting CSAM. No one's supporting these horrible people in what they do. And by the way, Apple didn't roll it out. They pre-announced it. So you might argue, as John Gruber on Daring Fireball has, this is exactly what Apple's intent was, to start this conversation. So it may not be that Apple was acting irresponsibly, that they were saying, well, we want to do this. What do you think? And they heard. And admittedly, late afternoon on Friday and a long weekend maybe is not the most newsworthy time to announce an embarrassing backing down, but they did back down. Now we'll see what happens in the long run. Yeah. They also, and Larry, I got to ask you this, they also told us how, if you're a child pornographer, you can avoid it. Just turn off iCloud photos, and it doesn't happen. Yeah, and you can find another way to share the data, like through an encrypted service. So it's not as if, and that's interesting you point that out, because this material will exist with or without what Apple is planning on doing. Unfortunately, these guys will go to any lengths to get to share this kind of material. So what's the point of even trying to enforce this? I mean, I don't know. Maybe child pornographers are particularly stupid people, but it's not going to. Maybe
they're not. Well, I mean,
I have to admit, I've told this story before, but when Patrick Norton and I were talking to the Secret Service about forensics and so forth, one of the guys said, the truth is most crooks are stupid, and we'll even just hand you the password, so you don't. Most cases, it's easy to catch these guys. I don't know if that's true now, but Apple, it sounds like, to be honest, Apple was doing this for PR, because there is a way to turn it off. And somebody who's actually doing this, by pre-announcing it, they're saying, hey, if you want to keep doing it, turn off iCloud Photo. So it's going to have zero impact in enforcement. It's a public relations move.
Much like most of their proclamations on privacy over the past few years.
And the only real problem is it's a PR move in contradiction to what they've been saying up to now. In both cases, it's PR. It's marketing. Your iCloud was never private, by the way. In fact, that's what they told the FBI in the San Bernardino case. They said, had you brought the phone back to his house, it probably would have connected to iCloud and synced up, and we would have been glad to hand that data over.
Or they would have been forced to, even if they didn't do it voluntarily.
Yeah, maybe they're not glad. I can't impute
but they could be subpoenaed, clearly.
Their feelings
Anything
about
in the
it.
cloud.
But we know that they often hand over data from the cloud.
Sure.
Because they have
and that's the thing. And the problem is, if it's encrypted on its way to the cloud, it may be impenetrable, and that's the problem for law enforcement.
I honestly think that Apple, and they haven't said this, wanted to turn on end-to-end encryption for the cloud. They had mentioned this before, and apparently, according to some sources, were talked out of it by the FBI. But I think Apple would, and maybe the plan was for Apple to turn that on and say, but look, we're giving law enforcement a way to scan this before it gets to the cloud, and that's all we're going to give them. So maybe
the other danger is,
this was all about Apple
phone?
protecting privacy.
What if somebody steals your phone? Can they get access to this kind of data?
No, that's the whole point. That's why the FBI San Bernardino case was such a big deal. Apple said under no circumstances are we going to allow even law enforcement to unlock that phone. That phone is sacrosanct. It's encrypted.
Right.
So what about that, Alex? Well, maybe this is just more PR.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that it's very reasonable that we brought up Facebook as the other company that we're comparing Apple to when it comes to detecting these images. I'll tell you why. Apple and Facebook are competitors in ways that people don't speak about enough. We talk about Apple and Android. But the truth is that Facebook has the set of messaging apps that will allow people to unhook themselves from the Apple ecosystem and move to Android. And in fact, they're probably going to prevent a lot of iPhone penetration in countries where WhatsApp is strong, because you use your phone for messaging primarily. It's the most important thing you do on your phone. And so Apple sees Facebook as this ultimate competitor. And that's why you've seen all these ads about what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. It's because the company is positioning itself against Facebook because it doesn't want you using those messaging apps. So you stay on iMessage, and you stay on iPhones, and you keep upgrading. You buy your next Mac, and you buy your next iPhone, and the list goes on. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to PR, that's why privacy has been the most, and I've been hinting at it at this point, but I might as well come out and say it explicitly. I think that's why privacy has been at the core of Apple's marketing efforts, Facebook number one, and then, of course, positioning itself against Android number two to make itself a luxury product. So at the end of the day, Leo, I think what you're pointing on is extremely salient and sort of core to the whole deal with Apple at this point, which is that the company is going to scare you about the other company's privacy in order to keep you inside its ecosystem, in order to keep Facebook weak and under the gaze of regulators and third parties, while Apple sits out and says, okay, I'm doing good. And
to reduce Facebook to an app that sits on the iPhone.
Correct, exactly.
Sorry to interrupt
so I think what
and
we've
to
seen
convince you to pay twice as much for an iPhone than an Android
exactly.
phone.
Yes, everybody together.
Great privacy.
And so I think what we've seen here is exactly the case. It's Apple all of a sudden, and that's again, it comes to consistency. Apple tried to make this PR move, showed that it was inconsistent, that it didn't really care as much about the privacy as it might actually be saying, and it was all about the public relations and the marketing impact. Steve Jobs back in the day said marketing is all about who you are and what you stand for, right? And so that's what they're trying to say. They stand for privacy. But when you start to peel back the layers a little bit, you see that this isn't exactly the big angel that it makes itself out to be. And that's, I think, what's being exposed in this moment.
That's the real bottom line of all this.
Let me read you two quotes from an Apple employee. And this, going back to the point of this is a critical juncture for this company. I mean, first of all, they're never going to invite me to anything ever again, or any of us.
Join
here.
the club,
Join
okay?
the club.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, look, when I was at CNET, I couldn't report on Apple for obvious reasons. But now that I'm at a news company, let's talk about some things that are happening there. One is that they never leak. They never leaked, at least in any usable way. Now they do. Their employees leak quite a bit. Let me read you these quotes, two quotes that I think are pretty important. The culture of secrecy is great for protecting our products and for protecting our users. But if our own employees cannot speak out about sexual harassment or unequal pay, then it works to the company's advantage and not yours. You become a target. You are unsafe. This is an Apple employee who said this. Let me read you another quote from her. Non-white, non-male employees at Apple are at a financial and decision-making disadvantage because these people are terrified of retribution. That's a direct quote from an Apple employee. And I'm an Apple consumer, but...
Yeah, I feel guilty because I have a lot of Apple stuff. I have to say,
I mean, this is to Alex's point about consistency and about how their own employees feel. I mean, the safety of their own employees is right now, it's a raging issue. I mean, it's a really challenging time for this company that position themselves as like the one golden angel in Silicon Valley.
I've avoided talking about this because labor issues are complicated. There's two sides. Often the company cannot express its side. It's difficult. So in our Apple coverage, we've kind of, tried to... No. I'm not saying to stop. I'm just saying why we haven't covered this more. But you have been, and you've been digging. Is it your opinion that this is a widespread problem at Apple? This isn't just a few unhappy employees?
Let me tell you. After Cher came forward in early August, and look, The Verge covered a bunch of other outlets covered this. Like, I'm certainly not alone, and I haven't done the vast majority of this. I think The Verge has done great reporting on it. Cher said after she came out with her initial reports that 1,000 other Apple employees came forward to her. She put my phone number, and I'm sure she's done this with many other journalists. It's not me. It's many people covering Apple. And she put my phone number in a spreadsheet, and it's now being shared with a number of people at Apple. And not my phone number, it's my Google Voice, but they call and leave voicemails. Yeah, this is widespread at Apple. And it's dangerous to talk like this about Apple.
Cher Scarlett has been doxxed and harassed because you don't want to upset Apple people. Not by the company. I don't know if the company's harassed her by outside.
Right. It is literally dangerous. It's weird. I mean, people. Covering Apple like this is an unprecedented moment in that company's history.
This is why you don't. Sad to say, in this day and age, you're careful not to come forward about anything. This is why when somebody does come forward, it's worth crediting them because it is, and they know it is a dangerous thing. Whether it's Me Too or Apple Too, it's a dangerous thing to step forward. Okay, so this is, we'll probably cover it more now because it's clearly become an issue with Apple. Is the shine come off the Apple? Is this going to hurt them as a business or no? They're on their way to a $3 trillion market cap.
I'll buy the next iPhone.
Yeah, see, this is the problem. Right there in a nutshell.
Well, a lot of people will buy the next iPhone, and I think that's fine. But I keep hoping we'll get to a point where people actually look at these devices and realize that they're paying a lot of money for sort of spit and polish and marketing and, this is the best iPhone ever. Well, of course, it's the best iPhone ever. It's the newest iPhone. But, there's some great alternatives out there.
Is Android from any manufacturer? Dan, you used to, in an earlier life, you used to teach dissidents in countries where it was dangerous to be a dissident how to protect themselves. Would you say to them, use an iPhone?
Yeah.
Because it was risky.
I have colleagues who do far more of this than I do, but I've spent time in Darfur, I've spent time in Cairo, in Ukraine, and places where your device security is your personal security.
Yep.
And I spent, not long, just a couple of weeks in Cairo teaching these Sudanese guys how to use security and encryption. And in fact, we brought them Android phones because you could put Tor on an Android phone. But we demonstrated everything on an iPhone, and my personal device was an iPhone. Now, you still have to use good operational security. You still have to use a VPN. You never touch a Wi-Fi network, never touch the actual mobile network itself. Do all of your good OPSEC stuff. But I don't know how it is today. I think I would take a Samsung with Knox maybe. Yeah. But I still would feel better taking an iPhone. I don't think I would go to Russia with any kind of phone. But also, Ukraine was creepy enough. But
I think talking about locations is important, right? Like there are some places where you might want an iPhone above an Android. There are some places you definitely want an Android above an iPhone.
Yeah, you'll be a target.
Well, one thing we've learned with the NSO group and Pegasus is that the iPhones are routinely and easily hacked by nation states.
And as far as I can tell, Google doesn't have a server stored on another government's property, where the New York Times reported recently that Apple does have some of its servers in a data warehouse that they rent from a Chinese government subsidiary. So this question has become far more complicated over time, and largely the factor from where I sit is the Chinese government's relationship with Apple and Apple's relationship with the Chinese government. And once you have those phones, I think it is just the phones in China, but once you have those phones sitting in those data servers, then or the iCloud sitting in those servers, it all of a sudden moves to who is the Chinese government going to want to help? Right. And it's not just China; it's China and its allies. And you end up in a pretty complicated web that doesn't make it, as simple as it might have once been to say, if you want security, go to the iPhone over the Android.
It's actually complicated because Google doesn't do business in China.
Exactly.
So there really is no phone you can buy in China that isn't invaded by the Chinese government. That's just a given. Right. And so your OPSEC is going to have to consider that. And obviously you keep everything encrypted. Probably don't put anything online at all if I were there. We're lucky. Yeah. We're fat and happy. We could sit here and not worry so much about the security of our phone. For the average American or Western consumer, the difference between an iPhone and an Android is not significant. But that's not the case. And you're right. It depends on where you are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. When you travel internationally, I mean, when I was in China, I was certainly aware that I could not trust. I think I had an Android with me at the time, but that I could not trust any security on that phone. Yeah. I mean, I took some stuff off the phone before I got to China.
Yeah.
Well, and also before you go through U.S. Customs, you might want to take everything off your phone
again.
Because it's just as intrusive. Periodically I get calls from people say, "I'm going to China. What VPN should I use?" And while there are some VPNs that work in China, I always tell them, don't use a VPN. You're going to China. You are going to be under the rules of the Chinese government. It would be rude to try to sneak around their rules. It might also be dangerous. Probably not as a U.S. tourist, but don't. Just understand you're surveilled. Used to be when you go to Russia, there'd be a minder on the floor of every hotel, and that person's watching your coming and going. Just accept that is part of where you are. You don't try to get around it. That's just a red flag, if you ask me. All right, let's take a break. There's a lot more to talk about. Well, this is good. We're going to do that. We're going to do the big, heavy news stuff because we've got a great panel for that. Alex Kantorowicz is here, Big Technology Podcast, and of course his newsletter, bigtechnology.substack.com. Always Day One. His book, absolutely a must-read. Thanks for being here. It's great to have you. Larry Magid from formerly of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, now at connectsafely.org, with a similar message to protect kids online. And a regular in various venues. You still do some stuff on CBS, yeah?
I'm still on CBS News twice a week.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep.
And speaking of CBS, from CBS News, our friend Dan Patterson, technology reporter there, longtime. All three of you, longtime friends of the network. Always great to have all three of you on. Our show today brought to you by Udacity. This is a great story. I love this story. Udacity was created in 2011. It's exactly 10 years old. Sebastian Thrun, who was a Google engineer, realized that they weren't the people that were applying for jobs at Google might have had the best degrees and the best pedigrees, but they didn't have the knowledge Google needed. He said, we got to do a better job in getting people ready for jobs in big tech. He created Udacity, and Udacity is famous for its nanodegrees. Originally with Google, but now nanodegrees are created for Udacity with companies like Microsoft and IBM and Amazon, as well as Google. In fact, the teachers you'll have at this incredible part-time online educational program are often team leads from these top companies because they know what needs to be done. This is a very practical education. If you love learning and you're always looking to learn more tech stuff, Udacity is for you, even if you're not looking for a job in the field. But if you are, take a look at those cutting-edge nanodegree programs. They've got programs, they've got classes you can't take anywhere else. AI, deep learning. How'd you like to be an autonomous flight engineer for flying cars? They've got a degree for that. Intro to self-driving cars, machine learning engineer. My personal choice, I'd want to be a robotics software engineer. I just love the idea. I've taken Python classes there. They're fantastic. The thing I really like best about Udacity is the courses are project-based, hands-on learning. It's not just going and watching videos. You're actually going to be tested. You're going to have to use what you've learned to create a project. All your homework and your project reviewed by qualified professionals. The code reviews, just like you would have if you were working at these big companies. Cutting edge technology. You'll get real human feedback. You'll get reviews. And of course, you're not on your own there. You have access to mentors 24/7. Udacity knows that, it's important this be flexible and easy for students. You could put in as little as 5 to 10 hours a week, work at your own pace any time of the day or night, graduate in as little as 3 months. You also they have flexible payment options. They have free courses you can learn at your own pace and on your own schedule. Udacity is very, very popular with people who love technology. 14 million people in over 240 countries use Udacity. Wow. You're getting ready for the job of the future, which is important. I might point out, World Economic Forum says that 75 million current jobs will be gone in the next 3 years, replaced by automated processes. Maybe you are in that job that's going to disappear. Maybe I am. Maybe it's time to learn some skills that will stay with you during the future, the new future. And by the way, if you have a team, Udacity for Business is great too. Check out Udacity for Enterprise if your team needs to master cutting-edge technologies, data science, AI. You know what? If I had an IT team, I would want to know cybersecurity. There's great cybersecurity training there. You can upskill your entire workforce at Udacity for Enterprise with real-world project-based learning. Just make sure you check out the Enterprise section of Udacity's website today. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career or just have some fun learning. Go to udacity.com/twit. Right now, we have a remarkable offer. This is limited time. Take advantage of it now. 75% off any program with the code TWIT75. Please use that. That way they know you saw it and you get an amazing discount. We want the credit. So TWIT75 at Udacity, udacity.com/twit. There's a limited time offer, so don't delay. Udacity.com/twit. Offer code TWIT75. Thank you, Udacity, for doing a good job getting people upskilled. Oh boy. Oh, let's see. I guess if we stick with Apple, I could mention the fact that Apple is now facing a little challenge in South Korea. I don't know if this has been signed yet. It will almost certainly be signed into law. It's been passed by both houses of the South Korean legislature, requiring Apple and Google to allow third-party app payments. This is something Apple and Google have both fought vigorously in South Korea, trying to protect their 30% cut of all app payments. And I think it's fair to say this is the first domino, because everybody's looking at this, including the FTC and the United States DOJ and Congress. Apple says you're going to destroy this platform. You're going to destroy our security. You can't do this. Google hasn't said much. I don't think, honestly, it changes much for Google since they've always allowed side loading. Apple also says, hey, it's fine. We'll just bill you. So if you are, let's say, Epic's Fortnite, and you decide to use Stripe for in-app payments, Apple says, that's fine. We're still going to bill you 30%. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know what's going to happen in Korea.
So what's that 30% getting you then? I don't understand. I thought the 30% was for security. So if you use Stripe, Apple's still going to bill you 30%.
Yeah, you pay 30% so you can sell, so you can put it on the App Store. But yeah, I guess this isn't side loading, but I guess you make a point. We have this
stuff drives me nuts.
We have a vicious debate going on at MacBreak Weekly because Alex Lindsay says, "Look, you're getting. I've sold software. This is a huge improvement over the old system where you'd have to print up discs and put them in a box with a manual and get it on the store shelves, and they'd still take 50% or more to do it. This is a huge improvement. Apple hosts it. They market it for you a little bit. They make it possible, and they only take a mere 30%. It does feel, if you're Netflix or Amazon selling books, it does seem like rent-seeking a little bit, because, after all, Netflix doesn't need Apple's platform to get people to subscribe to Netflix. It's a good question. If Netflix used a third party, they use Stripe or some other third party, or PayPal, some third party's payment system, Apple would be giving them no benefit, really. And why should you? If really the main reason you want to watch Netflix is at home on your big screen TV, but you're buying it on Apple's platform, Netflix loses 30%. It actually costs us in some ways because many companies, if not all, if not most, will add that 30% to the cost. You'll see the differential sometimes. If you buy on a website, it's 30% less than if you buy it on an iPhone.
As I remember,
that's the argument Epic used.
Right. It's costing consumers.
Years ago, you had to sideload Amazon apps onto iPhones, if I'm not mistaken. Am I remembering that right?
You never could have sideload it, but what Amazon did, if you had if you had the Kindle app and you wanted a book, you would have to exit the app.
Oh, you had to buy it somewhere else.
Launch Safari, buy it through Safari, then it would be available in your app. And that's what I remember. I think that's still the case for Kindle, not for Audible. Amazon has made some deal with Apple. That's another argument, by the way.
There's the consistency thing again, right? Like what we're talking about, and these applications of the fees. We can debate about the amount of fee, which is a different argument, but it is this consistency. And Leo, you're exactly right. Apple did make deals with some companies. And to Larry's point, they were pretty nuclear with Amazon, like no go, until they quietly made some changes in Audible. Now you can't purchase things in Audible, but you can apply your credits in Audible. And there's sneaking things coming into the Amazon app too. So really, it's although we could be frustrated at the policies, I'm more frustrated at the inconsistency of the policies. I'm the same frustrated at Facebook, Twitter, and all other big tech companies. I'm sure I'm not the only one here.
I think there's a guy who has a podcast and a newsletter about big technology might agree with you on that. Yeah.
Sorry, right. Alex, I'm not trying to make your point for you. I'm sure you're far more eloquent.
Come on onto the turf. Yeah, it's great to have you here. No, it really is. No, I think you're making great points. And I live
on the same side of the street, man.
That's right. Apple said this is all about security. So here's an idea. Why doesn't Apple give iPhone users one option to go through Apple Pay and use the App Store payment system and give like a verified check next to it, so you can be comfortable.
I think that's what they're going to do. That's exactly what they're going to do. And then make another one. Yeah, and make another one and say, okay, if you want to take a risk and you're not going to pay as much, go ahead, go in there. This should be at the end of the day about the customers. All these companies talk ad nauseum about the customers, but it's really about their bottom line.
They talk about users.
I will defend. Yeah. I'm going to, since nobody else will, I'll defend Apple.
Go for it.
I kind of agree with you guys, but I will I will take this role because it is an important point. Apple says, look, we're doing what is easiest and best for the customer. Customers don't want these switches. They don't want this confusing. In fact, on Android, you can sideload. You can press a button. Android warns you this is insecure. It's dangerous. In fact, they've even changed its behavior. It no longer stays. The checkbox no longer stays on to buy on third-party stores. It only is for that one purchase. Apple says we could do that, but that's confusing to people. It's not a good experience. And what we want is, and by the way, they're not an almost $3 trillion company for nothing. They're for most users, Apple is the painless way to go.
But if security was the only issue, you could have third-party organizations, companies.
I don't think that they say security, but I don't think it's really. I think what they really say is we want the best experience for customers, which includes security, but is more than just security.
But is Apple saying that its customers are sophisticated and smart enough to walk into one of its stores and pay $2,000 for a laptop or a phone, but not sophisticated or smart enough to be able to make a very simple choice between Apple's secure payment system and the rest of the web?
Channeling Tim Cook, that's why they pay $2,000 for a laptop or $1,200 for a phone, because we are going to give them a good experience. We're going to take the stress out of their life.
I have a PC which costs a lot less than $2,000, and I have a web browser which takes me anywhere I want to go. And it doesn't take a genius to know the difference between going to an insecure place to buy your stuff and a secure place, or at least a reputable place. And it seems to me that most iPhone users are capable of choosing whatever source they want to go to of their apps based on, in part, it being reputable. And there are plenty of companies out there that I would trust that could go in the business of selling apps.
You know what
I would
app I have on my Mac right now? I'm running the Epic Game Store on my Mac. Shocking.
Okay, but don't gloat, because it's only a matter of time before Apple comes for you and says,
I know.
Because honestly, this was my fear when Apple announced the App Store on the Mac and Gatekeeper, and they slowly whittled away your ability to say, no, I want to be able to buy Eventually, it's going to be, for the same reason they do it on the iPhone, look, you can only get stuff from the App Store. I think a desktop computing experience should be different. I, by the way, now use Linux almost exclusively for that very reason. But there are plenty of people, most normal people, who want simple, clean. And Alex Lindsay is a perfect example. He says, I try to buy everything in the App Store because then when I have a new Mac, it automatically updates. I can buy it once and it runs on all my Macs. It's just simpler.
I guess
Windows has a store. You can buy apps from Microsoft.
Oh, come on. The Windows Store is not comparable to the App Store on the Mac.
No, but I'm saying it's an option.
I think we would all buy Tim Cook's argument here if it was just you paid that $2,000 premium and you got the App Store and it was clean. But the complicating factor here is the fact that Apple does make that 30% on each one of those purchases when you pay through them. And Tim Cook has outlined the fact that Apple's new strategy is not necessarily a device sale, but it's software and services, among which the App Store fees are a tremendous part of that. So, I think that it sort of comes down to, are we buying the company's marketing messaging, or are we looking at the financial statements, or are we looking at what they tell analysts on the earnings calls and giving that more weight, I think, which we should do.
Let me be clear.
And they made
that all corporations,
exactly.
if they're doing their job, are doing this. Right?
Totally. No
Maximizing profits for the stakeholders and using marketing to make you feel good about it. That's what the job of a corporation is.
Apple does it in a way that I personally feel a little better about. I prefer their products. I prefer the same experience Larry does and others do. But it's the consistency of that applied experience.
Yeah.
And my agency in that experience. I think it takes away my agency in a lot of ways that they don't really tell us or disclose.
Steve Jobs was famous for that. He said his opinion was, we will pick the right way and you will do it that way. Back down to the original Macintosh, which had obscure screws so nobody could open it. Those Torx screws for a long time foiled people who wanted to get into their Macintosh. It didn't last forever, but that was intentional on Steve's part. They said we could put normal screws on there. And he said, no. I don't want anybody opening this beautiful work of art.
And the reason why this is moving from simple, consumer choice to antitrust territory is because the system has worked well. I don't think anyone's going to argue about that. But does it ice out, potential new businesses and small businesses and end up consolidating all the value that they're creating within one company that's using this approach as, something of a monopoly?
I think you nailed that,
I think that's
Alex.
where Apple's getting into trouble.
And this is something consumers it's not on their awareness.
Correct.
They don't think about, why is 0 rating bad for me? They think, I'm getting Netflix free on my T-Mobile. That's good. They don't think about the fact that it stops anybody else from doing the next Netflix, a better one. And so the elimination of competition ultimately hurts us, but it may not be apparent. And that's why it's kind of our job to be the sand and the oyster and bug the hell out of you and say, no, you don't want this. It seems like a good thing. Seems like the nice, warm, balmy bath of living in the Apple world is comfortable and cozy, but you have to understand there's a price to be paid for that.
Well, Steve Jobs himself is the king of, being people that push forward this idea that the customer won't tell you what they want.
Yeah.
You have to give it to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's from a company.
It worked.
No, of course, it worked very well. But asking people to raise their hand to come up with the problem, the fact that they're paying a premium on these app stores. We're not going to get far waiting for that.
It's interesting as a user, as what I would call a sophisticated user of technology. Increasingly, I am choosing a path where I get to choose, even if it's more work. That's one of the reasons I use Linux, because I want the agency. I don't like it that Apple takes away my agency. Yes, it's easy, but I want the agency, and I think in the long run that's better for me.
It might be that some of these things are. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are controversial because you are a sophisticated technology consumer, but it might be that we're all more sophisticated than we were a decade ago. And we're all asking questions, or more people are asking questions, and maybe they're asking more and they want more out of big tech than big tech has provided for us in the last decade or so.
Don't you think,
and
though,
it might be that
it's unpopular for Congress to challenge big tech, don't you think? Maybe not.
Look at how Congress challenges big tech. They don't.
They make a lot of noise about it, but they don't effectively challenge it, you're saying. And that's because big tech lobbies like hell and spends especially the telecommunications businesses, spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
But by the way, to illustrate Alex's comment about Steve Jobs, he used to quote Henry Ford saying that if I had asked people what they want in transportation, they would have said they want a faster horse.
Right.
And part of Apple's responsibility, all of tech responsibility, is to lead by showing us a better way. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with that.
Is it their responsibility, or is their responsibility merely to increase profits for stakeholders?
Well, I'm talking about their responsibility to the customer, or certainly what got Apple where they are was showing us a better way. I mean, if you had asked me what I wanted in 2006, I would have wanted the better BlackBerry, because that's all I was thinking about.
You didn't know any better. Yeah.
Apple came up with something that was, miles ahead of that BlackBerry.
There's got to be some middle ground where we can have innovation without crushing competition.
I think we're getting there. Like what we saw with Apple making this move is one step towards that future.
Yeah. And
slowly but surely, they're going to be forced, whether it's through court or through public pressure, to step back a little bit from their draconian rules in the App Store. And it's going to be better for everyone. Yeah. And then, we're going to live in a world where it never rains and it's filled with rainbows and innovation.
I live in California where it never rains, so that's not such a great world. But
well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
a nice world.
Just to show, just to prove,
anyway,
we are an equal opportunity offender. I just want to point out, Microsoft had a little problem with Windows 11 this week.
Yeah,
the next version of Windows 11 comes out now. We know October 5th, so they're beta testing it actively with insiders. And the insider preview build that came out this week had a little flaw. Recently, Microsoft writes, Windows insiders in both the dev and beta channels began reporting that the start and taskbar were unresponsive and settings in other areas of the OS wouldn't load. We quickly discovered an issue. This is why you do bug testing, I got to say, with a server-side deployment. Apparently, they turned on an advertisement for Microsoft Teams, and because the server that was serving the ad, it has to go out on the internet to get it, was unresponsive, the whole system was freezing. But good news, if you're an insider, there's a fix. Hit Control-Alt-Delete, choose to open the Task Manager, go to More Details to expand Task Manager, go to File, choose Run New Task, type CMD in the open field, then paste the following into the registry: reg delete HKCU software Microsoft Windows current version iris service /F && shutdown -R-T.0. Bingo. Bob's your uncle. Everything should be back to normal.
So simple.
What I love, first of all, it's a beta. This is what happens. If you're doing a beta, this is what happens. But I love it that Microsoft, this got bit by trying to inject an ad into Windows. And to me, that's the fundamental problem, is now I have an operating system that is advertising to me.
For Teams.
Is that why we have 11?
No. Okay, cynical again. This time I'm channeling Tim Cook again. The reason Microsoft is doing Windows 11 is because PC sales have started to tail off. And traditionally in the Windows world, people get a new copy of Windows when they buy a new PC. So really what Microsoft's doing is supporting the PC industry by creating a whole bunch of new PCs this fall that run Windows 11, hoping consumers will say, I got to have the new version. In fact, it's one of the reasons they've made it hard to upgrade to Windows 11.
I would say, but a lot of machines you can't even run Windows 11.
2-year-old machines.
Yeah, the one I'm using right now is 3 years old and it can't run Windows 11.
Yeah.
So if I want it that badly, I'm
They say,
new machine.
again, by the way, security, like consider the children and terrorists, is becoming the new mantra for why we want to make more money, how we make more money. They say for security reasons, we're not going to let you use a machine without TPU or Intel 8th generation,
Right.
earlier than an 8th generation Intel processor. It's not clear that makes it more secure in any way.
Leo, I take back all the bad things I said about Apple until this point.
I just wanted to
Thank
show.
you, Tim Cook. I'm paying that 30%
We skewer everybody. It's all the same. Actually, I want to talk about Locast when we come back. I'm going to take a little break right now. It is said that if you're paying for something, you're the customer. But if you're getting it for free, you're the product. In the case of television channels, you're both the customer and the product. Good news. Kind of the worst of both worlds. We'll talk about that in just a little bit with our great panel. You said when you are protecting yourself in a country where it is not safe to be a dissident, you never touch the internet without a VPN. I agree with you, Dan. If you want to preserve your privacy in the U.S., you might also want to use a VPN. And if you're going to use a VPN, you want to consider which VPN very carefully, because all of the privacy and security issues are just passed down to that VPN server. That's why I use ExpressVPN and recommend it. ExpressVPN protects your privacy. They actually go the extra mile with this trusted server technology they invented and have deployed on all their servers. When you open, and by the way, it's really nice, ExpressVPN, they have an app for every platform, including smart TVs. When you press the button, it chooses the server closest to you. And at that point, what happens is cool. It spins up in RAM only a copy of the trusted server. That's what you're using on their servers. It's in RAM. It's sandboxed, so it cannot write to the hard drive. It only operates in RAM. And as soon as you close that server, it's gone, as is every trace of your visit. You are completely private. So privacy, security, absolutely. Every time you connect to an unencrypted network, whether it's at a Starbucks or a hotel or an airport, every person on the network can see you. And if it's a bad guy, they can run tools that will allow them to do all sorts of stuff to mess with you. It doesn't take much expertise. Honestly, a script kiddie can do it. That's why you want to protect yourself online for your privacy and for your security. And oh, by the way, when it chooses the server, you can say, I want to be in England instead of in the U.S. I don't want the closest server. I want a server in Tokyo. And you can use it to watch content that you can't get in the U.S. So there are lots of good reasons. ExpressVPN. It's kind of like you wouldn't drive without car insurance. Would you use the internet without the insurance of an encrypted tunnel between your device and the outside world? No. ExpressVPN. Strong encryption. Fire up the app. One button click. Yes, it works everywhere, including smart TVs. I think they're the probably most invasive technology ever. In fact, you can now, and this is what we did, we could put ExpressVPN on your router, so everybody in the house is protected. And ExpressVPN, again, this is why you want to choose a good VPN provider. They invest in infrastructure so that they're fast, so that you can do that. You can make all your traffic going onto the internet go through the VPN and still watch HD video. Nobody will say, oh, what happened? It's all slow, because ExpressVPN invests in their infrastructure. I recommend and use ExpressVPN. I think you should too. Secure your online data today with the only VPN I trust, expressvpn.com/twit. 3 extra months free when you go there right now. expressvpn.com/twit. Get the 1-year package. You'll get 15 months for the price of 12. EXPRESS. Spell it out. Another reason I like them. They leave the vowels in. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support. We thank you for supporting us by, as I always say, using that URL so they know that you saw it here. Locast has given up. And there are a lot. Do you guys know about Locast? Yeah? You've heard of it? Yeah. Locast was actually kind of like Aereo. Remember Aereo? That was the New York City startup that put dime-sized antennas in giant arrays and then let you, in effect, use that antenna to get local live television stations.
I was a paying subscriber.
Were you? Well,
yeah,
of course,
absolutely. It was innovative.
The first thing that happened was the networks and broadcast stations sued To their credit, Aereo fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court where they lost. I actually don't remember what why SCOTUS says Aereo was illegal.
Maybe because they were charging.
Well, no, and that's what happened with Locast.
Locast, yeah, wasn't charging.
Let me see. The Supreme Court broadcasters sued Aereo within weeks of its introduction, arguing that streaming their content without permission was copyright infringement. That was how they do it. The Supreme Court heard arguments in April and ruled against Aereo June 2014, I think. Yeah. I can go on and on. I don't want to read all this because it's not germane. What happened was Locast said, okay, how can we do this without falling prey to the same lawsuits? And they said, we're going to be a nonprofit. So the copyright rule says as long as you don't make money on it, it's okay, right? I guess.
No, it doesn't. Copyright doesn't require.
There's some nonprofit
loophole. Any YouTuber who uses
I guess not.
Music.
You're right. They're still protected, isn't it? Yeah. Well, somehow they felt like if we don't make any money, we're protected. A judge ruled this week that, well, that's not the problem. The problem is you are a nonprofit, but you take the proceeds. So the way Locast worked, it's free, locast.org. It would only work in the same ADI, area of dominant influence, of the stations you want to watch. So I'm in the Bay Area. I get San Francisco stations. Nobody from Chicago could see those, but people in Chicago would see the Chicago stations. And what Aereo was doing was and then they put a little announcement saying, Aereo is nonprofit, but support us for $5 and we won't bother you with these ads asking you to support us. And they did it quite frequently, every few minutes. And I know a lot of people, a lot of cord cutters who said, this is great, $5 a month, $60 a year. I get the live locals. It lets me cord cut because I don't need the cable anymore. I could just get internet and watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, but I get my live locals so I can watch football, the Academy Awards, that kind of stuff.
Local news.
Local news. That's a big thing. That's the gap with cord cutting, is that live local stuff. If you're not close enough, if you don't have an antenna or you're not close enough to get via an antenna, the TV stations.
And here's what I don't understand. Anybody can sell an antenna, right? You can go out and buy an antenna. They're perfectly legal. How is Locust really any different than an antenna if it essentially gives you the same content that the antenna would?
Well, that's the argument a lot of cord cutters use. But here's why Aereo got shut down and why Locast got shut down as well. So they got sued by the broadcast stations, and the judge ruled, look, because it's good, you're nonprofit, good start, except you're taking the proceeds and using it to expand in new markets. That's not allowed. Locast could, of course, appeal, and they could even do what Aereo did and go all the way to the Supreme Court and they said, oh, screw it, and they have stopped operating. Yeah. So they were really, I think they were designed to get around this thing, but the judge said no. So here's the argument, I think. And this goes back to, are you a customer or are you a product? If you're listening to Twit, for instance, right now, you could be you could either be both. If you're listening and you're hearing the ads, then in effect, you're the product. We make money by selling your ears to the advertisers. That's how we survive. And that's how broadcast television, broadcast radio survive. If you decide you want to join Club Twit, pay $7 a month, we say, fine, now you can be the customer. You pay us. We don't need to put ads in. So we give you the choice. Broadcast television discovered that they could do both, and that's what happened. When this goes back to the cable companies and retransmission agreements and the must-carry rules. Initially, cable companies were created so that you could watch the locals, right? I live in Petaluma. I'm too far from San Francisco to use an antenna. Comcast comes along, put up a big antenna. They can get the channels, digs a ditch to my house, puts copper into my house and says, here, now you can watch from our antenna, pay us. The broadcast station said, whoa, wait a minute. FCC jumps in and says, all right, you got a choice, broadcasters. You can either require that they carry you, and then you can't charge them. Or, and most broadcasters chose the second choice, you can say, we want retransmission fees. Comcast, you can broadcast Channel 4, but you got to give us a fee, $1 or less, usually per subscriber. Those fees vary. And so most stations now are double dipping. They get the ad revenue. In fact, they love it because I'm seeing the ads here in Petaluma too. But they also get the revenue from the cable companies. You're both a product and the customer. The problem with Aereo and the problem, in my opinion, with Locast is you're cutting off all these lucrative cable fees. People no longer need to watch on cable. And I think that was why they ultimately sued.
Yeah. But you are increasing your audience, which means you could theoretically be getting more advertising revenue.
Well, guess. I'm going to guess. You should ask CBS, but I'm going to guess that they want both.
Well, we have CBSN on CBS News.
You stream.
And we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't charge for that. It's a free product, so it avoids exactly that. And we are moving into local markets. Sorry, I'm not trying to log roll for CBS or talk over Larry.
No, you have expertise in this area. That's perfect.
We have CBSN, which is 24 hours a day streaming news. It's hard news. There's no opinions. And we are launching these in different markets like Denver, New York, San Francisco. And exactly to your point, Leo, this is not a for-pay product. This is a local news product, but it is the traditional model where the viewer is the product being sold to advertisers, which I think most of us are familiar with and fairly comfortable with. And I don't work on the business side. I can't speak for our strategic plans, but I know when this was rolled out, this was considered a benefit that we're not charging our customers and we're not double dipping here, or we're not charging the viewers.
Locast has, by the way, appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. So they're not suspending forever, but they are suspended right now.
I did just buy a TV for the first time in my life. And I did get one of those bunny ear antennas. I'm like in the heart of New York, so I had no problem with it. And I installed it in particular so I could watch CBS. Thanks, guys. Watch it on Sundays, watch football for free. So I think that it's kind of interesting that I am able to do that just because I'm in service area. But if you're outside of service area, Leo might be, and you can't use Locast, because you might be costing these companies some money. It seems unfair.
I wonder if it wasn't for precedent, for the fact that the antennas have been around for decades, if they would try to outlaw what you're doing, given the current situation. I mean, that's my point. I frankly still don't see the difference between your rabbit ears and a Locust subscription in terms of what it accomplishes.
I agree 100%. And I think, the folks at Locast argue it's just greed on the part of the networks, the broadcast stations. They say they get a free license from the U.S. government to use those airwaves, but the retransmission consent fees, which are on the order of at least $12 a month, according to the New York Times, amount to billions of dollars for broadcasters. The founder and CEO, David Goodfriend of Locast, says Locast was always meant to be a public service for people who want to watch their local broadcast TV stations, can't get them over the air, can't afford expensive cable, satellite, or streaming services. Locast showed that millions of Americans fit that category. They deserve something better than the status quo. Locast says 3.2 million people signed up for the service. Does not know how many paid for it, but they did generate $4.3 million in revenue last year.
That's not nothing.
And that's still all legal, by the way. Nonprofits generate revenue all the time. Mm-hmm. The judge, Louis L. Stanton of the Southern District of New York, said that the issue is Locast was using the proceeds to expand its service to other cities, a move that, in his view, ran afoul of the law. The copyright code, this is weird, but the copyright code allows nonprofits to solicit funds to defray the actual and reasonable costs of maintaining and operating the service, but the judge felt that expanding violated that. The networks called the ruling a victory for copyright law, vindicating our claim that Locast is illegally infringing copyrights in broadcast television content in violation of federal law. It's a very narrow, it does not vindicate copyright law. It's a very narrow slice there. Mm-hmm. And I think they would like to put Locast out of business. I think there are a lot of Locast users who are pretty unhappy, and there is no reasonable alternative. For a while, you could watch locals on Sling for $5 a month, and I was telling people to use that, but it turns out Sling was using Locast. So, never mind. I don't know. What do you think? Who's right in this one? I'll let you recuse yourself, network guys, if you want to.
I'm no longer a CBS News employee, so I can say what's on my mind here. I contribute, but not employed. Look, I'm on Locast's side. I really just think, why make it the victim here is the consumer.
Agreed.
Is Comcast a victim? Maybe, but Comcast is a victim. I mean, the handwriting is on the wall, and of course, Comcast and their ilk are making a fortune in internet charges. I have the full Comcast double play, right? I've got TV and I've got internet. It turns out that the internet is the vast majority of what my monthly payments are. So even if I stop paying that little cable bump that they get, they would still be getting, over $100 a month from me for my high-speed internet. So I just think that enough is enough, and to make it harder for people to get stuff that they could get if they had a big enough antenna. Leo, I'm sure there's probably some technology.
If I had a 100-foot mast,
right? Exactly.
I could probably get the locals. Although if I go to TV Fool, it says no, you're not going to get anything but channel 50, which is up in Santa Rosa.
Well, but the point is that why should you not get broadcast TV just because you happen to be a few miles away?
But that's what created the cable business. That's really what started cable, right?
Too bad. They can make their money on the internet, and they make plenty of it on the internet.
They figured.
And by the way,
out.
Comcast is a Connect Safely supporter, so maybe I'm in trouble in that regard.
Shh. No, they're not. We didn't hear that. What? No. Dan, do you want to say anything? Do you? I mean, I understand broadcasters want to keep making those sweet cable dollars. I don't blame them.
And there's definitely nobody at my work telling me what to say.
No, I know. I'm
say,
just teasing, obviously.
I mean, for sure, I know, but some people might not know that. And,
yes. Right.
But I mean, look, when I was an Aereo or an Aero subscriber, I felt like at least what was sold to me was that this is a physical array. This is an actual transmitter, and you are renting time on it, or you're paying for that physical time. And I lived in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn. I've lived in New York for a long time. And sometimes you just cannot get a transmission signal in the middle of buildings. So it felt like, okay, I'm not ripping anyone off. And at the time I worked for a different news network. It did not feel as though, and I think the same about Locast, but I don't know the fundamentals of their business model.
Here, I found it. This is in U.S. Code Section 111 of the Copyright Code. It specifically talks about retransmission of broadcasts. Secondary retransmissions are exempt from copyright if it's not made by a cable system. It consists entirely of the relaying, this is why they did it, by the management of a hotel apartment house. That's why they did it, so that you could have an antenna for a hotel and all watch that. Or similar establishment of signals transmitted by a broadcast station licensed by the FCC within the local service area of such station, and as long as you don't make money at it. So this is an exemption that was carved out, I think, probably not for companies like Locast and Aereo, but for others, as it's not actionable if the primary transmission is made by this carriage signal. So the key is you can't make money at it.
But the hotel is making money.
Yeah,
off the room rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to have to defer to a lawyer on this one. Clearly,
I wonder,
Locast was trying to use this section of the law to justify it. And this judge, I think, is mistaken. I think they might win on appeal.
how much damage does it actually do to the networks if something like Locast is widely available? Because it will require people, you're not going to really get a lot of people signing up to Locast if they can use the antenna.
Right.
Like someone in a location like me. You're also not going to get a lot of people signing up to Locast if they have a cable subscription, someone like Leo. So what is the total addressable market for a service like this?
I have to think that it's the cable companies that really wanted the broadcast companies to sue. They don't have standing, so they had it. I wouldn't be surprised if,
they're nudging them.
Ryan Roberts called up and said, could you sue these guys? Because Leo, the only thing stopping Leo from getting rid of my cable subscription is I want those locals and I can't get them any other way. If I have Locast and I add Locast maybe to Netflix and Amazon Prime, all I need is an internet connection. I don't need the cable TV, right? So that's who's really at risk from this. And remember that the money does go downhill because the broadcasters get that money from Comcast.
The one fly in the ointment, though, from the standpoint of the networks, what if we were to go and buy the ExpressVPN product you were talking about earlier and tunnel ourselves into a market that we don't actually live in? The way I get to watch BBC, by the way, against all British law by using a VPN.
You are a freeloader.
No, but I'm seriously, could one get if Locast still existed and I wanted to watch New York television, could I use a VPN to tunnel into New York?
Well, just like the BBC and iPlayer, they attempt to discover if you're using a VPN and block you. The issue is that many VPNs, are doing things to get around that, like changing IP addresses regularly, using clean pool and stuff like that. So I think it's not easy to know if you're coming in on a VPN, but they try. And I bet you, if Locast did a good faith effort, which I think they do, to block VPN traffic, that would be considered sufficient. You can't block everyone, but in theory, you're only watching if you're in local. So this is an example of I'm on the side of users and enthusiasts, so I'm saying damn you, but at the same time, I kind of understand that this is really a game that Locast is playing, that they looked at Aereo and said, how can we get around that? And they're making money on it. I'm sure they're making money on it. I mean, they're a nonprofit, but, they pay their staff. Actually, on Reddit, there was outrage because Goodfriend makes $180,000 a year, to which people said, are you kidding? Do you know how much the head of the Red Cross makes? This is nothing. This guy's not.
Right. He makes $1 million.
This guy's not raking it in. That's actually quite reasonable for the head of a nonprofit. Well, I don't know. So on the one hand, I know all of our listeners, a lot of them use Locast. I've recommended Locast over the years. It does seem like it's just, I don't know. Really what's happening is we're in a transitional period where broadcast is going to be replaced by streaming. Right? Ultimately, isn't it?
That's why we have CBSN.
Yeah. CBS isn't dumb. They know that's the future, and maybe it's a lost leader right now, but ultimately they need to understand this business.
And it's why the cable companies have internet access. I don't know if there's any major cable company that isn't the internet provider in their market or one of the internet providers in their market. So, it is a transition. You're absolutely right. And I don't think any of these companies are going to go out of business. I mean, CBS makes money or should make money because they've got great content. I mean, that's the reason why.
Are there ads on CBS, on the CBS streaming, CBSN? There's ads.
It's exactly like it's indistinguishable from watching a television news product. We have ads.
Except you can't fast forward. You can't fast forward on your DVR. That's the only downside.
That's true.
Well, it's live.
Right. And I'm sure that factored into
you can't fast. Yeah, right. That's called nature.
Right.
You can't
watch literally live news.
You can't go to the end of this show until we do it.
but you can record broadcast news and watch it later. I can watch.
Oh, I'm sure there's a way to record CBSN
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need to. I mean, we put all of our segments online, and you can you can just rewind. I mean, you can scrub backwards. The same thing you do with any live product. There's a player. You can just rewind, especially if you want to hear a point that was made a couple times. And it's not just on your browser. We're on your Roku and all the OTT boxes.
Do they prevent you from jumping through commercials? Do they do anything about like that? Do you know?
It's live, so you can't.
No, but if you're watching the recorded stuff.
Oh. I've never tried. I mean, if I'm watching a segment, it's on the website or on YouTube. It's YouTube ads, and if I'm on the website, I can't skip the ads. I have ad blockers running like crazy on some browsers, and I can't skip the ads.
Yeah, which is fair.
It's my salary.
That's fair.
So
no, that's completely fair.
Right. Right. It does feel fair. And that's what, it really does. Again, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to log roll for CBS, but it really does feel like a fair proposition.
Here's the challenge.
We give you news, we put ads in it, and that's it. You can watch or not watch.
Right. Here's the challenge.
Nothing shady.
Here's the challenge, and this is the same challenge radio stations face. There's several. First of all, broadcasting as a different business model. When you're broadcasting, 1 million people could watch. It doesn't cost you any more than one person watching. When you're streaming, it's completely the opposite. It flips it.
Right.
Every single person who watches costs you, not a lot, but costs you some money. Those costs are going down. The other problem is now you have to sell advertisers. So when I'm a local station, I'm selling ads for the local businesses. Does CBS can only sell national ads, or are they doing some sort of IP address geolocation stuff? Do they have different ads? Do you know? You probably
I'm not on the business side, but I do know that our ads on CBSN are national. I'm sure there's geolocation stuff, but we are rolling out to local markets. And I know that the editorial priority was that we believe in local news.
Right.
And
so in those cases,
local
you're going to get
local news. You're going to get local ads.
Yeah.
You'll probably get national ads too, but I'm sure you'll get, if you're in Denver, you'll get a local ad.
So
and
ads
you'll get
work.
Local anchors that you know.
Ads work. The only thing that gripes me at all is when you charge for something and you run ads.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
Exactly.
That's everybody. I mean, that's what
cable. I mean,
CNN does.
I'm like,
CNN runs ads. And I'm paying a lot of money to
Oh, you
watch
know, we have
CNN.
Paramount Plus, so I can't say we're not doing this, but I don't think those products were developed separately. So I can't say we're not doing that. But
well, everybody does it. And I have to pay for a higher tier of Peacock and Hulu,
Right, Hulu,
so I don't get ads. But so I like how we are doing it at Twit. You either get ads or you pay us $7 a month and you don't get ads. You don't pay $7 a month and get ads. That's double dipping. But everybody double dips now, so I guess I can't complain. But it bugs me.
Isn't Peacock free plus ads option?
Yes. So there's a free ad-supported version.
Yeah.
There's a little bit, pay a little bit more. You still get ads, but you get more content. And then there's the Peacock Premium, which I ended up buying because I don't want ads and I want all the content. And that's probably their point is we give them, it's freemium. We give it away, but you're going to end up wanting to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Same thing for Paramount Plus, same thing for
I kind of like that model, actually.
For the freemium?
Give the user a choice.
Yeah.
Give them a choice.
The reason I like ad-supported free is it's democratic. There's anybody who's got internet can watch us. I think that's the right way to be. I think you want to be everywhere you can be, and I don't think you want to have people to have to pay. But I understand some people don't want to be tracked. All ads in some way are going to end up tracking you because advertisers demand it now, and people don't want to see ads. So fine, $7 a month. That doesn't exactly. I don't know what the exact replacement would be. I don't know how much we make per advertising listener. It's probably more than $7 a month, but it's enough so that we can say, okay, no ads. I guess the ideal way would be for us to figure out how much per listener we get and then make that be the fee to get rid of the ads. But I don't think we're that sophisticated. Hulu apparently thinks it's $11 a month. But they got more stuff. They have Below Deck. Wouldn't you rather watch Below Deck than listen to Twit? I think so.
How's Club Twit going, Leo?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
We didn't know what the expectations would be. Lisa, my wife, our CEO, and the only person who understands business in this in this company, was hoping that we could get a 10% subscribe rate, which would be phenomenal. That would absolutely be enough to just eliminate advertising. I was a little less sanguine because we'd already tried this at the very beginning of Twit. In the PBS world, with constant pledge drives and everything, I think they get 5 or 6%. So I was hoping that we would maybe get 10% of our audience.
Yeah, with PBS, you have the other than making you feel good, it doesn't give you any benefit to pay.
Doesn't give you any benefit. So we're giving you a benefit, and it's, by the way, it's not just ad free. I think our Discord is fun, and we get the Twit Plus feed and all that. But I don't think we have more than about 3,500 subscribers, which is 2% of the audience.
Oh, let me backtrack what I just said, because I just subscribed to KQED, which is the PBS station in San Francisco, and I do get the PBS app on my Roku. So
actually, I think you can get that for free, can't you?
I don't know. I think some PBS content you have to pay for.
Okay. So that's another mess because the government funds it. They have
Or
corporate
contributes to
funders, contributes. They don't fund it 100%. They have corporate funders. Yeah, no, I that's one of those where, I give them money to feel good. And I want a tote bag, right? Who doesn't want a tote bag? No, I feel like I want to support a company that's doing good things for the community. That's a good, it's a charitable donation in effect. In effect, it is.
It literally is.
Yeah,
well, actually, it's not. I don't know if you can write it off or not, but I think you can.
I think you can.
Yeah. Because they're not giving you anything of value. Because you would get the value anyway.
We are not a nonprofit. You cannot write off your $7.
Well, maybe for business usage.
I don't know. I would love to see it be more than 2%. That seems a little low. One in 50 listeners to our shows are willing to give us money. But honestly, we've been giving it away for 15, 16 years. So it's also hard to start charging for something you've been giving away for 15 years. You
know what your problem is, Leo? Your advertisers, your ads are too interesting.
A number of people.
You're not annoying people enough.
A number of people told me I pay. In fact, somebody just said this in chat. I pay, but I still listen to the ads.
Take some My Pillow ads, and you'll turn people off.
Yeah, we gotta make our ads more obnoxious. I think you're right. That's how we get the subscribers up. I hadn't thought of that. How can we make our ads worse?
Your business.
Yeah, really. No, I don't know. I kind of, as I get older, have less of a dog in this hunt. I can now start to sit back and say, I wonder how this is all going to play out. It's very clear that everything's going to come in on the internet eventually, right? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
No, the metaverse, of course. The metaverse.
Yeah, the metaverse. I mean, I work in radio. I get a significant portion of my income comes from the weekly radio show, the Tech Guy show. But I don't think that's a long-term proposition. I don't know. What do you think? You do, Larry. Larry, you do radio.
We had this conversation. I remember when I was around 2012, and the CBS people were feeling fat and happy because they had no threat because they owned these transmitters, right? And I said to them, what's going to happen is that eventually you're going to be able to listen to streaming radio in the car on the iPhone or the Android. And of course that came about. I can't remember exactly what year they came about, but you're still at the point, if you want to listen to local traffic, if you're driving, through Silicon Valley, you're probably going to turn KCBS on your FM radio, but you don't have to. There are alternatives. And that's where I think broadcast is eventually going to have to change their business model.
Is it traffic? Is that the only thing keeping
Well, there's traffic and weather and listening to me, maybe. I don't know.
I think you can get weather. I don't think I think weather is the first thing that should go. I have weather on the front page of my phone.
Well, first of all, I've got traffic
you're in the car.
Yeah.
You're on
Who
Google
cares what
Maps.
the weather
You don't
is?
need the traffic report. You have the
that's true. I got Waze. I got Google Maps.
ETA.
That's a good point.
Right.
That's much. Waze is 10 times better than some guy in the sky doing a bit of traffic over there where I'm not even going.
Right. My career started in radio, and I remember my boss. I think this is still true, and it's the problem that you're describing that radio still solves. And my boss told me that, look, we have our value proposition is one button. You turn your car on and we are playing. Right. Yeah. And when you're driving, although we have all of this technology, which will provide us with news and music and weather and all this information, even with my phone, that's a ridiculous proposition to use my phone while I'm driving. What I can do with the radio is punch a button and change the transmitter or change the station.
But see, that's the thing is that has even changed. I said that in the early days of podcasting. Until we're as easy as punching a button on a radio, we'll never be as big as radio. But that has all changed. With CarPlay and Android Audio or on your Tesla Android Auto.
True.
It's easier. I get in the car and whatever I was listening to starts again. And if I wanted to get a traffic report for some reason, I could fire
I assume your Mustang has what the Tesla has, right? Which is the ability to verbally ask for any audio source you want.
It's actually better because Elon insists on using its own software, and most cars these days, including my Mustang Mach-E, use Android Auto or CarPlay.
Right.
That's better than anything because I've got Siri or Google's Voice. I've got all my apps, and plus my phone is updated daily
in real time
compared to a car, which is updated maybe once a year at best.
Well, except for a Tesla, which is updated
all
monthly.
the time.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
when's the last time?
You are not the sample of all drivers, though,
No,
right?
but
Or
that's
all cars on the road.
that's-
I love what you're saying, but
I think
you
that's
are
the
talking
future.
about a future that exists for you.
20 years from
right,
now.
exactly. It's the
I think
present
the
for
station-
you. It is the future for a lot more people.
I wonder how many people have. Every modern automobile now has CarPlay or Android Audio, I think.
except for the Tesla.
Yeah,
Or
I think
something.
the
For
station-
sure. But what's the average length of time that a car spends?
Well, 10
the
years.
lifetime of a car.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. That's,
I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No,
I'm just
no,
saying,
I'm just saying-
a lot of people just get in the car and the radio is the radio.
No, that's right.
But
But
if
the
Biden
wave, you have to plan for the future. You can't say, "Oh, I'm fat and happy now," as many radio executives do.
Right.
What's it going to be like in 5 years or 10 years? Are you going to still have a business? I don't know.
I think
No,
we're missing the key
no,
here,
for
though.
sure not.
I think that the station manager got something wrong. Power to him. But it's not about convenience to listen to local radio. It's the fact that local radio brings you together with the people that you're living
Yeah.
around. And you feel like you're part of
It's
something
live. It's live.
greater than yourself. And
I know
just moved
those
back to New
DJs,
York.
those anchors.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I just moved back to New York, which is where I grew up from California.
Parasocial relationships.
And I gotta say, I get a thrill turning on these radio stations as opposed to playing from Bluetooth because I remember that I'm part of this. And I can, when they read the weather, it's not just me checking my weather app. That's all of us together learning what it's going to be. When they tell us traffic, that's all of us sitting on those roads learning what it's going to be.
I think
And
that's
of course, the
that
sports
was
stations
And algorithms
are all
have pushed us into
millions-
silos.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Well-
when I hear the sports guys talking about like how the Jets or the Mets or the Knicks are doing, I'm like, dang, these people are connecting me with thousands of other people who feel the same
And
way I
Leo
do
and I-
and are tuning on now. And it's one of the few shared experiences we still have. in our
God
modern
bless
world,
you,
and that's why
Alex
I love radio.
Kantrowitz. God
Right.
bless you.
Leo, you and I
Thank
could have
you.
said that because you and I grew up with Walter Cronkite, Huntley Brinkley, and whoever the ABC guy
and
was.
Don Imus.
And that was it, right? That was it.
66 WNBC. And I loved that. And you're right. Alex is exactly right. There was a communality. But as you're about to point out, I won't steal your thunder, Larry, that's disappearing.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, when I look back at the golden days of TV in the 60s and 70s, I like the fact that virtually every American who was watching TV or was watching one of three networks, and if they were listening to radio, they were listening to one of three or four, local news stations. And I really think that this whole misinformation situation we're in is partially as a result of the fact that we have so many choices that any bozo now can either get on the internet or get on cable news
Partially?
and say whatever they want. Now, I love the fact that we have choices, but I bemoan the
have
unintended consequences.
So what was the term you used, Dan? Para-community? Is that what you called it?
Parasocial relationships. We have them now with podcasts. It's when you have a relationship with somebody who doesn't have a relationship with you. So a broadcaster or a podcast host, a Twitch streamer, right?
So
a parasocial relationship.
it's a one-sided
asynchronous.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what
But
is
it's the
so what do psychologists say about that? I've experienced that because people will come here or I'll meet people in the street who know me, but I've never met them in my life.
Because they've spent hundreds or thousands of hours with you.
Yeah.
You are their friend.
Yeah.
You are their friend, but they are not your friend.
So
But
what does that
there's
mean?
By the way, how you
relationship.
treat them, they will never forget it.
Oh, I
If you're
know.
rude to them.
I'm
they'll
never
forget
rude
it.
if I can help it. I'm never rude.
Yeah.
And there's a relationship between the listeners and the broadcaster, but also the listeners and each other. So there becomes these communities of Twit listeners or communities of, for instance, Joe Rogan listeners, and they feel a bond that when they meet somebody else who listens to the same
That's
stuff,
true.
they're part of that community.
That's true. Willard Scott passed away this week.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. 87. He was the Today Show weatherman.
Yeah, for
That's a
decades,
perfect
yeah.
example of a parasocial relationship because everybody felt like they knew this guy. That was his secret, wasn't it? It was very like you knew, like he was your buddy. Mm-hmm. He wasn't standoffish.
All of these broadcasters.
That's a good broadcaster.
All broadcasters. This
All
is
good
right.
ones,
A good, a good broadcaster is one you feel as though you have a personal relationship with, not one you feel like is broadcasting to millions of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I had the same experience with Leo. I meet people. What happens with me is nobody recognizes what I look like.
But they know your
recognize
voice.
my voice.
Yeah.
So I'll be at a restaurant or a radio and somebody say, "Are you that guy?" And, you know, there's a bond.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting.
Probably get that, Leo.
It did just happen to me also, where I walked into one of my new local coffee shops, and the guy looked at me and goes, "You got a podcast?"
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
And he
good
had
for
seen
you.
a video
Isn't that
about
great?
it on YouTube recently.
It's a
One of
big
the food
thrill the
that's
first
over.
time.
Yeah, it was cool. I was like, wow. But I didn't, I see the numbers, but I didn't realize there's actually people behind them. But,
I never
really
believed
is the
that.
case
There's actually people
are.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when you find that and you have that one-on-one connection.
Actually, that's a great point. I wonder if that's going to keep some sort of. Does it have to be live? No, you don't have you're not listening to Joe Rogan live.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are.
Oh, really? You can listen live? I mean, we do our stuff live, but I would say.
And Twitch is asynchronous and it's live, right?
Yeah,
YouTube,
a lot of people watch
and live.
Actually, that's a good point. A lot of people watch Twitch live. Do we want live? Is that what we want?
I don't think live is the issue, except for sports and certain breaking news. I think it's something else. I think it's the fact that we have such a balkanization of providers. That's the problem. And again, I'm not bemoaning that because it's also the benefit. We wouldn't have a Twit or the big tech podcast if it weren't for the fact that anybody can get into this business without investing billions of dollars in transmitters. So that's the good part. The bad part is
I only invested millions of dollars, so I have
but you didn't need to invest millions simply to get on the air.
Well,
You could have
what's
done that.
funny is when I started in 2005, to do what we wanted to do did cost a lot of money. Now, you got people like Alex Cooper, who just got bought by Spotify for $60 million, who basically uses her phone in bed. and so the technology is also moving in the direction of enabling. But one of the side effects is now there's a lot more people doing it, and there's a lot more competition.
Right.
And there are a lot more, maybe this is the larger societal effect, niches, narrow. So there's a Joe Rogan listener who doesn't talk to the Alex Cooper listener. They're different. Spotify might own both of them. In fact, probably that's why Spotify owns both of them, because there's an impermeable barrier between them.
And algorithms are amplifying this.
And they're amplifying it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Is
just like
that
social
good or
media.
bad? Is that part of the problem in this country? Is that we've got all these little bubbles that we live in and we don't talk to one another?
I had this long conversation a couple of weeks ago with Maria Ressa, Roger McNamee, and Chris Wiley. It was an interesting mix of people. Maria Ressa runs Rappler in the Philippines, one of the largest news organizations in her region. She's also been the target of attacks by Duterte. Roger McNamee was an early investor in Facebook and an author.
He's
and
also a
Chris
college
Wiley,
classmate, I might add.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And Chris Wiley was
class.
the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower. And all of them said, I asked them, are there good things that come from this? They all said, look, community can come from this, kind of like what Alex and Larry and you were describing. But they said the harm greatly outweighs it because we're actually not creating communities. We're creating silos and they don't talk to each other. And when those silos only talk to each other, they create challenges. Some of those are not so bad. Some of those are really bad. But no matter what, when you have information ghettos and silos, it's not a good thing. What you guys are describing are communities, broadcasting, many people with shared values. What social media algorithms do is the opposite of this. At least that was their argument.
So I'm a member of the Nextdoor, nextdoor.com in Palo Alto. And we're having a vibrant debate over this recall, this attempt to recall Governor Newsom and replace him with Larry Elder, a right-wing talk show host. And I've been very vocal because I really think the recall is horrible. But the point is that there actually is a conversation going on between a handful of people who really are pro-recall and a group of people who are anti-recall. And it's refreshing. And I don't get that on Facebook because Facebook, everybody I know agrees with me. They're all like-minded people, and it's kind of boring.
Is it, is it a shouting match on Nextdoor?
It's a shouting match, but respectful. I mean, these are
really interesting.
Be careful.
Is there progress being made? Is one side persuading the other? Or?
Well, that's what I was about to say. That's the problem. Is no.
They're talking at each other.
if you are a pro-recall guy, you are convinced that Gavin Newsom is the devil incarnate.
Right.
And if you're an anti-recall person, you're worried about a Republican takeover, based on 10% of the vote after they recall the guy. So no, that's the problem. There's still no movement.
Shoot. And I thought we'd solved the problem.
Or I should say, it's not. There doesn't appear to be movement. But at least there's a conversation and it's respectful.
It's a big step to just even have a conversation. I think I want to vote for live. I think that there is something in the human biology that likes knowing that the person you're watching right now is doing what they're doing, whether it's not next to you or not right now. That when you're driving, somebody in the chat room said, you're driving down the Deegan and you're listening to the same thing the guy in the car next to you is listening to. There's something happening there, something magical happening there. I kind of hope that succeeds. We're nuts. No podcast network does what we do, streams our shows live. Some do, but it's very expensive and not a probably. It's easier now with Twitch and YouTube and stuff, but it was a crazy idea. But I love live because I came from radio, and I just love the idea. And talk radio is a two-way street. It's not parasocial. Well, it is, but it's less so because you're talking to the person who's listening to you at the same time. I like that, but
I love talk radio.
I just don't want it to go away, and I feel like the internet's probably going to get rid of it.
No, but the internet won't. The internet is just simply a mechanism of delivery. It's a delivery mechanism. It has absolutely nothing to do with the content itself. It doesn't really matter. You can be listening through radio, television, to two cans with a string. It's just a connection that all the internet is.
Yeah. Twitch has amazing chat rooms, right? I mean, you can watch Twitch later, but it's way better live.
Yeah.
You have a chat room. They're arguing. They're talking about crazy things that the broadcaster is talking about.
No, it's true. All right. Well, we got to, as they used to say in radio, pay some bills. We're going to take a little break. My dear friends, Larry Magid is here of connectsafely.org. Are you the CEO? Is that your?
I am the CEO. Wow. Yeah.
How long is that?
I won't tell you how few people work for me.
Okay.
But
You're the CEO of connectsafely.org. Larry Magid on the Twitter. Great to have you. Of course, Dan Patterson from CBS News. CBSN. Is it CBSN.com?
No, it's just cbsnews.com/live.
Nice. cbsnews.com/live. And there are apps for every platform. And I put it on my Apple TV because it's nice to have live news that doesn't require cable. I think it's great.
Who's that?
What's his name? We've been hearing him. What's
Fred. Hi.
Fred?
Sorry.
What is Fred?
I know he hears me and then he is.
I don't mind. Let Fred come in.
Where is Fred?
Is Fred a lab? What is Fred? I see a tail. That's all I see. A red tail. It's not a lab.
Yeah. Come on.
Leap into Daddy's lap. Oh, look at him.
Boy. Hi.
What a good boy.
Twit, Fred. You're a good boy. Sorry.
No, he's adorable. I want to take him home. He's great.
Just wants attention.
Oh,
I'll mute this.
Look at that good boy. And
he's SAG-AFTRA member. Does that mean you might have to pay him?
Yeah, I have to pay him scale. Yeah. Also, what's scale for dog appearance on podcast? Very little.
Probably more than you're paying me, Leo.
Yeah, probably more. Yeah. Also with us, it's great to have Alex Kantrowitz, bigtechnology.substack.com. And of course, the podcast is there as well. Is he a Ridgeback? Somebody says Mr. Bean thinks that the good boy is not you, Alex. You're not a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
I was about to say, he's a pure mutt. I've never got.
He's a mutt. I like the mutts. I like the mutts.
He's a good boy, though.
If you have a dog, or you have wildfires, or as in Petaluma, you have a season where people are fertilizing, you might wish you had a molecule.
Good transition.
We got a molecule, I have to say, and we know when it's not working. We have to remember sometimes people turn it off or whatever, and Lisa will wake up and say, the molecule was off last night, wasn't it? I said, yes, it was. She said, I got a headache. Molecule, that was the first one we got. We liked it so much, we got one for Michael's bedroom. Now we have one in the studio. Molecule's reimagining the future of clear air, starting with the air purifier. Now, the thing to understand about the molecule, thing a lot of people don't understand, it's not a filter. It's not something trapping particles for later disposal. Molecule's core technology it's called PECO, P-E-C-O, It's short for photoelectrochemical oxidation. It actually destroys tiny, harmful pollutants. Things that no filter will capture, like volatile organic compounds, paint thinner in the air, formaldehyde, viruses, yes, bacteria, yes, mold, yes. Molecular air purifiers help protect homes, businesses, even medical spaces. In fact, I should mention the Molecular Air Pro RX uses the same technology, got FDA approval, 510K Class 2 medical device specifically for medical offices to destroy bacteria and viruses in the air. It really works. In fact, if you go to the Molecule website, you can see research papers from government research labs, DOE labs, like the Lawrence Berkeley lab, where they tested the molecule and found it actually eliminated formaldehyde from the air. One of the things Molecule does that's great, some air purifiers put ozone into the air. Molecule also reduces ozone, another harmful compound in the air. And by the way, yes, Molecule's PICO technology meets the performance requirements and the FDA guidance for use in helping to reduce the risk of exposure to SARS-CoV-2, the COVID-19 virus, in healthcare settings. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't wash your hands and practice social distancing and wear masks, but that's one of the reasons we're really glad to have Molecules in the studio. It's an extra layer of virus protection for your spaces. I am very impressed. Dirty indoor air is actually worse than outside air. In a lot of offices, you can't open the windows. You can't open the windows here. It's a sealed office. That means the air in here is not great. That's why you need to get a Molecule. A Molecule Air Mini, designed for smaller rooms up to 250 square feet. Your bedroom would be perfect. The larger Molecule Air, for larger rooms up to 600 square feet. We've got the Molecule Air Pro. That's for 1,000 square feet. I'm looking at it right now. One of the reasons we had to have it is after the wildfires a couple of years ago, it made it impossible to be inside because of all the smoke. Took care of that. They also have a Molecule Air Mini Plus, which helps protect small rooms with a particle sensor and auto protect mode, so the fan speed is adjusted depending on the quality of the air. We just love our Molecules. And I mean Molecules. I've invested quite a bit in Molecules. For a limited time, save up to $120 on Molecule air purifiers. Just go to MOLEKULE.com, molecule.com, Molecule with a K, not a C, and use our promo code TWIT. You'll get free shipping, a 30-day at-home trial on your order. If you're at all, is this going to work for me? Get the 30-day trial and see. The code TWIT will save you up to $120 on Molecule air purifiers at molecule.com. And if you're skeptical, read the research. There's a lot of research papers on the website, so you can verify that I am speaking the truth. It really does work. Molecule, we love them. Molecule.com. Offer code TWIT. We are probably something like a week away from a new iPhone. It's unclear. Typically, Apple will do it early in September. No one's saying. Best guess would be, I think, not this week, but on the 14th. There was a wild rumor that Apple would add satellite features to its phone, that it would use low Earth orbit satellites specifically from Globalstar to provide emergency services on the phone. This originally came from an analyst. Let me pause that so we don't hear the video from Bloomberg. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who's usually very well connected, kind of tamped down the speculation. He said the next iPhone could have hardware needed for satellite communications, but he says even if they do, the features are unlikely to be ready before next year, according to a person who asked to not be identified because the plans are not yet public. Bloomberg also, this is boilerplate now in all Apple rumor stories. These features could also change or be scrapped before they're released. An Apple representative declined to comment. But Mark had a lot of detailed information. I think this is probably a good thing. Emergency message via satellite. So if you are lost or injured and you're outside satellite, you could send a message in your Messages app using not SMS, the phone network, or iMessage using data, but using satellites. And you'd get a gray message bubble instead of green or blue. I like that. The second feature will be a tool to report major emergencies like plane crashes, sinking ships, also using satellite networks. The texting via satellite tool is codenamed Stewie inside Apple, and they will be short length. They'll push through to an emergency contact's phone, even if the do not disturb setting is on. So I think this is a good thing. We'll see if it happens. An Apple event, if it happens, we'll certainly stream it. And I'm going to guess, my best guess is September 14th, which is a week from Tuesday. Anybody want to say anything about that?
I like this idea.
I think it's a great idea, right?
I think that if we had this idea, we wouldn't have that movie 127 Hours with James Franco. Guy
wouldn't have to chew his arm off. That's right.
In the rock and pull out the iPhone and you text, "Hey, I'm stuck," and then you're saved. So I'm into it. But
I think it's a great idea. I mean, there are devices you can buy or rent.
Spot watches,
you're out hiking.
And stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter rents one when she goes hiking in the backcountry, just for emergencies.
Yeah, there are two different kinds of this kind of emergency stuff. REI had a good article. They're the camping supply company. They sell both personal trackers and then messengers, emergency messengers, spot watches. I think a good thing to have. And certainly these are small. There's no reason you couldn't have that technology in an iPhone or even an Apple Watch. So I will hope that is the case. I guess that wasn't a good conversation starter, so let me find another one. How about Texas?
Oh, boy.
We're going to talk about abortion?
No, we're not going to talk about abortion. But there is a tech angle to this, which is that this law, which, again, is kind of gamifying Roe v. Wade, would encourage private people to snitch on abortion providers or anybody who aids or abets an abortion. And in order to do this, they set up websites to do this, which immediately stimulated action from the tech sector. Silicon Valley responded right away. GoDaddy, the initial website, which was set up on GoDaddy, was shut down within a day. They moved to DigitalOcean, which I think has already shut it down. Mark Benioff has canceled all of Salesforce's business that was in Indiana when they did something similar. I imagine there'll be a bit of a backlash.
Did you see
Uber and Lyft?
Yeah, right, exactly. So the idea is if you drive someone to the abortion clinic, can you be sued for $10,000?
Yes.
Is that what they're saying?
Yes, because you're aiding and abetting.
Driver?
Plus, it incents somebody who sees that to go, because there's a $10,000 reward to go onto the website and say, "Hey, I just saw somebody leave for an abortion clinic in an Uber."
So if you're an Uber driver, you have to have somebody certify that you're not going to get an abortion?
No. Uber and Lyft has announced they will pay legal fees.
Good. And what about an airline? What if you fly to another state? Can the airline be sued, or is that okay because you're not getting the abortion in Texas?
That would be federal jurisdiction, not state, so they can't get you for that.
Okay.
I would hope not.
That'll help
Whatever
when
happened
I afford to fly.
This is, they talk about Sharia law. I think we're getting close.
Yeah. Well, doesn't Texas respect the right of businesses to make their own decisions and whatever happened?
Yeah,
to
that used to be a rule, right? Yeah. Already, TikTok users are flooding the Texas abortion site with fake tips. Apparently, it's pretty easy to generate a fake address that's in Texas. So the website profilewhistleblower.com, which was set up by Texas Right to Life, that's the one that got kicked from GoDaddy and elsewhere, is being flooded with phony tips. Don't mess with 4chan, man. Don't mess with them.
Kind of funny because "don't mess with Texas" is almost a cliche.
Yeah.
But doesn't it freak you out a little bit when people organize and end up taking political action via TikTok? Because at the end of the day, it is a Chinese company, and I don't mean to fearmonger, but is there a point where the Chinese government exerts its influence over that company and ends up doing something?
Yeah, Hong Kong.
Using the users there to either start a political movement or using its influence to shut one down.
Yeah,
and
you can't post
stories.
Can you in the U.S. post pro Hong Kong TikToks, or will that get taken down as well?
Yes, you can.
I think you can, but
the U.S.
in Hong Kong you
TikTok
could not, especially during the protests.
Right.
They took all of that down and they lied about it.
Right.
Exactly. So there was that incident where they kept on buying tickets to Trump's first big rally, and no one showed up because they just expected all these TikTok.
That was a TikTok grandmother who organized that.
And there are people that celebrate this stuff, but every time it happens, I become a little bit wary and think that
I think Larry Mag is one of those people. He just wrote a senior's guide to TikTok.
I did.
You did.
I did.
It's not a senior's guide to TikTok hacktivism, though. I gotta say.
No, it's a senior's guide to TikTok. Well, we talk about all the things you could do on TikTok, which include activism, but it also includes recipes and health tips. And it turns out there are a lot of seniors that I can't remember, but 11% of TikTokers are over 50, which is something that a lot of people. I didn't know that until I read that. I was surprised. And a lot of people with gray hair like me are using TikTok.
Do you, Dan Patterson, not use TikTok because of what they did in Hong Kong? Like Alex,
not because of Hong Kong.
No.
Oh, no, I would use it to learn about Hong Kong, but no, I don't have any social media on my phone. In part because I'm worried about what it does to me as a person, and in part because, especially with TikTok, and again, I also don't want to fearmonger. But the data that's hoovered up by Facebook, TikTok, and others is not something it's not an exchange I'm willing to engage in. And I don't derive value. I mean, there is value from these things, but I don't derive enough value or pleasure from them to make them.
Yeah, it's the same reason
compromise.
I don't have a Facebook or WhatsApp account. I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I deleted my Instagram and Facebook years and years ago, but I just found that it made me feel worse. Like maybe in the moment there would be some dopamine pings, but at the end of the day, it made me feel worse. And I just didn't like that feeling. But also I'm not trying to always be down on technology firms and social media companies, but I don't trust them. And I don't trust what it's designed to do. It is addictive technology, or at least it appears to be addictive technology, and I don't want it on my phone.
It's not China per se that bothers you. It's just the platform.
It's the algorithms, and it's the amount of data that they gather.
But Alex, it's China that worries you.
I mean, I'm personally bothered by the China thing for sure.
Yeah.
I ended up taking TikTok off my phone. Maybe partially because of that, but also I took part like a couple of months in the pandemic and said I was going to learn TikTok, and boy, did I learn it! I got so addicted to the thing.
It's very addictive.
There came time where there were some nights where I finished work and I was like, I just want to lay down in bed and be on TikTok, and I would be on for a couple hours. And I said, much like Dan said, I'm just like, I'm done with this. So I deleted that. I deleted Instagram, and I don't miss it.
Yeah.
You see,
so I killed two birds with one stone.
maybe I don't have an addictive personality, although there are things that I feel like I overuse. But I just look at TikTok for a few minutes now and then, and just kind of laugh and move on. And if anything, I probably use too much Facebook. Because what happens is I get really I'm a very political person, and I get irritated by things that go on in the world, and I want to complain a lot. So I kvetch a lot on Facebook. But I guess I am willing to make those trade-offs, the ones that some of you guys aren't willing to make, because I do derive value from them.
Okay. So I'm not sure how China would use TikTok. I guess it could. It could create a quote, simulated grassroots movement to, I don't know, get somebody elected president, for instance.
Any TikTok user could do that.
But anybody could do that. Yeah, but China.
No, it's different though, because if you use your influence over a company as a sovereign nation, where that company is based, to have them push their algorithms to get not just one person but lots of people, moving forward toward a political movement, that's very, very different from an individual user trying to change things. So it's not even like what Russia did with Facebook, which we can have a debate about whether that was effective or not. But they were like, we're going to use Facebook's algorithms and, put fake accounts there to do it. The worry is that they use they use their influence over TikTok to get the company to change the algorithms to turn up or turn down some political movement, and then cause some sort of disruption or something unnatural here in the U.S. I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you've had these conversations, Alex, but I've had conversations with people at Facebook who say, yeah, we react and not in the ways that you think. We are not as liberal as you think. And the decision makers certainly aren't as liberal as you think. And we certainly react.
Well, and let's be fair. Doesn't matter what political point of view they're espousing. If they're doing it, it's bad, right? Just because it disagrees with my progressive politics doesn't make it worse than
right. That's precisely it.
Yeah. Yep. Whether they're left or right, anything that's doing that, it would be bad. And on the other hand, I kind of have some sympathy for what China's doing to big tech. You know, they shut down Didi, they shut down Alibaba. Now the latest, this one I'm not sure I agree with, but I kind of understand. They've told teenagers you can only play video games 3 hours a week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. and on national holidays. 3 hours, 3 days a week, and they even say the specific time. God, you couldn't do that in the U.S. Can you imagine?
No metaverse in China.
And yet,
most parents can't even do that.
I kind of respect that. That's like them. Yeah, but I couldn't do it as a parent. I tried. My parents did it to me. They said half an hour of TV a night. That was tough.
I had the router in my office when my daughter was a teenager, and I would just unplug the Wi-Fi network. And that would
I did a little more modern thing, but I would have the Euro shut off the network at 10 p.m. on school nights. But 1 hour for 3 nights a week? Wow.
Yeah.
I don't suppose we'll hear a lot of protests out of Chinese teenagers. I bet you most Chinese adults say, yeah, that's right. That's a good thing.
It's not something I want the Biden administration to emulate.
There's all
it's
this
allegedly.
Go ahead. You, Alex, then Dan.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I mean, there's all this hate, and I get it, about screen time. And there are legitimate concerns there. But one of the things that this stuff does, video games and social media, it gets kids to think creatively, think outside the box, think abstractly, think outside of the rules of the in real life universe that we live in. And all these
skills collaborate too.
Are going to be and all these skills are going to be critical in the next wave of work. Where like up until now, we've had a take orders and fulfill orders type of workplace. But all those skills that they're building in social media and the gaming world are going to become critical for the jobs of tomorrow. And so when you shut that off, you do shut off a key training place, for your next generation to learn.
I guess we'll know in 10 years if Chinese young adults are inept at social media, if it's going to hurt their economy. Dan, what do you think?
Well, and it's only under 18. I've been told something similar, and then it's to help redirect strategic focus, whatever the heck that means, in a statement. But I think that could be a euphemism that kind of means a lot of what Alex said.
There's a lot of thinking I've read that says really what China is doing is it wants its tech sector to focus on innovation that helps on AI innovation that helps the country, and not on consumer. All of our stuff is now consumer innovation. Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And they want to stop that. They said, no, you know what? We want to strategically redirect our energies towards stuff that builds
the U.S. argument. Yeah, our argument is that, or the U.S. is arguing that this is the reason China is doing this, to redirect strategic focus towards activities where, like, there's opportunity cost towards what you spend your time on, and they're allegedly they're redirecting towards things like AI and other technologies that will be of greater benefit.
Is that a mistake? Do you think the Chinese are doing something different, or do you think that that's accurate?
Is this going to be around in a year or two? The ban, this age restriction?
Oh, I don't know. Do they have a history of backing down and stuff like that?
I don't know.
Well, if it is, it's a grand experiment.
The thing is, it may have some strategic advantage for China, but as a general parenting policy, to limit screen time to an arbitrary number of minutes or hours a day or time, I'm not saying
that's what I told my mom and dad.
Go online at 3 a.m.
It's exactly what I told them.
Well, I mean, when a kid's playing a soccer game, the parent doesn't arbitrarily say, hey,
too much
time
soccer.
For dinner, we're going to you quit the soccer game. I mean, these are collaborative exchanges of people. I mean, I know there are problems with overuse, and and kids need to be reined in. But I don't like the arbitrary nature. I mean, aside from the fact it's coming from the government, which is something that would not be tolerated, hopefully, in this country, I don't like the arbitrary nature and the way they're doing it. I wouldn't mind seeing a program to encourage kids to exercise more and do other things. But the idea of this arbitrary time limit, one size fits all, this is the way it's got to be, it doesn't make sense even when it's coming from the parent, let alone from the government.
And do you think our best AI engineers didn't play video games? I mean, that's nuts. Of course they spent their days in video games.
I agree. I mean, I've seen
about what to build.
I've seen pathological use of this, but for most part, this is the future. Kids are going to operate in a world that is not like my world. My parents didn't want me to listen to rock and roll, and now I'm a rock and roll DJ. No, that's wrong. But, I mean, you got to understand that cultures change, and this is the current culture. And
every generation has moral panics.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had to cut my hair and stop. No, my parents said, grow your hair long and listen to more rock and roll, but stop watching Batman. They did not want me to watch Batman. We're going to take a little break, and then I have a bunch of short, quick stories so we can get you out of here. And I know it's been a long show, but I can't stop talking to you guys. You're great. But we'll wrap it up in just a little bit. First, though, a look at the week that was on Twit. Whoa! Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. Oh! Look who's appeared. It's like Beetlejuice.
What is happening?
That's Craig Newmark, by the way.
Previously on Twit. This Week in Google.
Craig is, of course, the Craig of Craigslist, but lately has been a great philanthropist.
I really do listen to the show fairly religiously. I'm very much looking forward to the Moral Panic Gutenberg drinking game.
Tech News Weekly.
I thought I'd spend a little time just going hands-on with the Galaxy Z Fold 3. Unfolded, the inside display is a 7.6-inch display. And, the screen types are different. Obviously, this is a foldable, so you can kind of see there's a little bit of a crease there.
Windows Weekly.
I was thinking if Paul decides he wants to try Linux, it'd be fun to do at least a short series of shows with Paul, like going, what the hell is this all about? We'll call it the Linux Idiot.
Hey, I noticed the's no ads in this thing. How do I fix that?
Where do I turn on the ads?
I come from Windows.
We have album art for your new show. I just want to... Linux for Pauls. Hey?
This is your brain. This is your brain on Twit. Any questions?
A lot of fun this week on the show. Our show today brought to you by another podcast. If I give a plug, Kevin Rose was here a couple of weeks ago talking about his Modern Finance podcast. I have to say, we kind of try to dissect the world of modern finance, but really Kevin is the expert. The investment world is changing quite a bit. Kevin is one of the, leading investors. He was the founder of Dig, early investor in some of the biggest tech companies in the world, worked at Google Ventures. He's now at True Ventures. Bloomberg called him one of the top 25 angel investors in the country. Time magazine says Kevin Rose is one of the top 25 most influential people on the web. He's also a smart guy, and his Modern Finance is the podcast to listen to if you want to know more about Bitcoin, NFTs, robo-investors, decentralized finance. It's fantastic. He interviews... Actually, it's smart. He does 2 different podcasts a week. Show 1 is, he calls them the consensus episodes, where they explore weekly news, distill it into digestible information. Show 2 is deeper interviews with individual crypto founders, NFT artists, some of the biggest names in the business. I didn't understand NFTs at all. I'm going to be the first to admit it until I listened to. It was actually his premiere episode on NFTs. Kevin has done very well, by the way, in NFTs. If you're curious, if you'd like to know more, join Kevin Rose and the Modern Finance Podcast every single week. You will not want to miss an episode. It helps you make sense of all the coins, the chaos, the NFTs, that are, I think, changing the world in a very significant way. And boy, Kevin is connected. He really gets the people on. Now's the time to equip yourself with the knowledge of where things are going. The financial landscape is harder than ever to navigate, but you don't have to do it alone. Download and subscribe to Modern Finance wherever you listen to podcasts. Kevin Rose's Modern Finance. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple or Google. Or there's also a website, modern.finance. I love Kevin. I am thrilled to plug his podcast. Don't be the last person on the next train out. Listen to Modern Finance and get ahead of the future of finance. Really interesting stuff. And the greatest people on there. Modern Finance. Thank you, Kevin, for being a good friend and for a great podcast. I don't normally like to plug other people's podcasts, but Kevin will make it kind of an exception. Modern.finance is the website, or mofi.net, your choice. A couple of quick short stories before we get out of here. Some big, I think, changes in certain ways and other things. According to Front Page Tech, John Prosser, Google's Pixel 6 will be coming October 28th. That seems reasonable. Google has decided to delay the return to office. A lot of companies doing this. Yeah. Till next year. It's kind of indefinite. Apple II. Apple doing this as well. Apple II is confusing. Apple II. Apple T-double-O. Apple also. There. That's good.
You and I are the only ones in this who have probably ever used an Apple II.
We remember the Apple II. Isn't it funny how this stuff moves so fast? And at this point, that's ancient history.
Right.
Stuff like that. Facebook's WhatsApp fined by the EU for equivalent of $270 million for privacy violations. They failed to disclose fully how it collected and shared data about users. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I think Facebook can afford that. But it's still, that's still a hefty amount of money, $250 million. Twitter has launched its super follows on iOS, and yes, Apple gets 30% of each and every super follow. You can now charge for tweets. Congratulations. I'm not rushing to sign up for that.
And a percentage to Twitter. So you're giving Twitter money and you're giving Apple money. And what are you left with at the end of the day?
I love it that Twitter has disclosed exactly how much everybody's getting, so you don't feel bad about the 30 cents you get on the dollar. I'm kind of a little bit mad at my friend Darren Kitchen, whose site is now selling a USB-C to Lightning cable that can steal your passwords and other data. The OMG cable, which was debuted, I think it was at DEF CON last year, is now being...
That's a chutzpah selling it.
Yeah, that's being mass-produced. Mass-produced and sold on Hack 5. Yeah, it's a little bit of
How much
chutzpah.
is it? I'll buy it.
Yeah, well, it's the thing is Darren's always sold a lot of hacking tools on Hack 5's website. But boy, Apple did not respond to a motherboard's request for comment. The cables include these indistinguishable from Apple's Type A to Lightning cables. There are also USB-C to USB-C cables. The thing that's important to understand is now you can put, chipsets are so small, without modifying the cable in any significant way, you could put a radio in there that streams out everything you're using. And Motherboard tested it in downtown Oakland. They were able to trigger payloads. Oh, no, I'm sorry. MG tested it at over a mile. You could be a mile away and see what's going over those cables. They've even added a geofencing feature where a user can trigger or block the device's payloads based on the physical location of the cable. So as long as it stays in the victim's house, it works. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Anyway, I just thought I'd let you know. Hack5.com if you want to buy one of those. And I guess the bottom line, don't trust any cables unless you know where they came from. Don't enjoy your Labor Day weekend if you're in IT. The U.S. government is telling IT professionals, patch your Atlassian Confluence immediately. CVE 2021-26084 is ongoing, an ongoing 0-day. And the U.S. Cybercom actually said, this cannot wait till after the weekend. I'll do it Tuesday. It's Labor Day. No. It's a 0-day. Qualcomm has debuted a new Bluetooth technology that says will give you CD quality. It's lossless. It'll be in the next generation of Snapdragon chips. It's called aptX Lossless. But you can't get it on an iPhone because they.
Hey, Leo, my Bluetooth player just broke. Should I bother replacing it? Is there any reason to own a Bluetooth DVD player these days?
You mean Blu-ray?
I'm sorry, Blu-ray.
Don't confuse them. Blue
I'm
is
sorry.
not, all blues are different.
I was half listening to you.
I feel like this is a question for the tech guy.
Yeah.
My Bluetooth DVD player died.
No, my Blu-ray.
And
hey.
No,
Blu-ray.
I wouldn't. Well, that's actually a great debate. Is physical media dead? I've been saying physical media is dead forever. You could get
my wife keeps coming. She keeps going to the library and bringing back these DVDs.
Well, then you need to get another one. I'm sorry to say. The good news is they're cheap. Yeah. I would get a UHD one. Do you have a 4K TV?
Yeah.
Well, get a UHD one. Then you can upgrade it to 4K.
Not if it encourages my wife to keep going to the library and bringing back physical media because it drives me nuts. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a great question. But this is not about Blu-ray. This is about Bluetooth.
I'm sorry. That's what I get for reading. That's what I get for reading while you're talking. I was actually doing email.
Thank you, Emily Latella. There's another outdated reference. You know what I'm talking about? Gilda Radner's character on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah.
What's all this about Bluetooth DVD players? Never mind. Amazon's about to launch a TV. Probably somebody else will make it. These are all, I'm glad these are the shorties because there was no conversation. These are not conversation starters.
Well, if you misinterpret Bluetooth and Blu-ray, you've got something to talk about.
Thank you.
You owe it to me, Lou.
At least you started a conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Apple is buying my favorite streaming classical music service, Primephonic, and they immediately put it out of business, which pisses the hell out of me. They say, we're going to do a version later. Great. So what do I do between now and then? I did get a refund.
When US Air bought PSA and then put it out of business.
Yeah.
They destroyed a great airline.
Yeah, I loved PSA.
Yeah.
I loved the stewardess outfits on PSA. That's how I used to fly to school every year. PSA had, it was like Southwest.
Hot pants.
They had, I was moving on, but okay, we can talk about the hot pants. I don't think people should.
The flight attendants.
I don't think flight attendants should be required to wear hot pants.
I agree.
But they did. And Skorts, they were famous for their outfits.
But they also had $10 flights between LA and San Francisco, which is why I love them.
That's why I flew them to school. Yeah, and they also had I think it was open seating like Southwest does now, but they also had seats facing each other.
Yeah,
like on the
train.
Did,
like a little lounge.
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Just to put this in perspective, Larry and I were in our early 20s. We didn't know any better. I
didn't appreciate.
We thought Skorts were a good idea.
I thought that even back then, I knew that was sexist.
Yeah,
and that flight attendants are there for safety, not for.
Thank you, boy. You really were very politically correct.
I was ahead of the time. Yeah,
you were way ahead of the time.
I was.
All right.
I went to Berkeley.
Anything else? You went to? Yeah. Of course. No wonder you flew PSA. House committee investigating. I guess we should have started with this one because I bet you guys will have something to say about this. The House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection has gone on a social media phishing expedition. They're asking for records from everybody, Google and Reddit and Snapchat and Telegram, but also TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, 4chan, 8kun, Facebook, Gab, and Parler, everybody. It's well within their purview, I think.
I wouldn't call that a phishing expedition. I don't like the frame on that. That seems to be doing their job, subpoenaing records about a crime.
Okay.
Maybe you can call it phishing, whatever. Euphemisms.
There are some things that maybe they shouldn't have asked for that they did, including internal communications, reports, documents, and other materials relating to internal employee concerns about content on the platform. That seems like more than going after
they shouldn't
rioters. They probably shouldn't do that. I'm actually just reading the headline from Tech Dirt. That's where the social media.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry for giving you a hard time. I just don't like.
No, that's exactly why.
This is what the government should be doing.
Do you think they're doing the right thing?
I don't know precisely what they're doing, but I mean, there was a crime, and we know how and where much of the crime was planned.
Right.
And like we talked about at the very beginning of this argument or discussion show, I'm sorry for saying argument, but there's a difference between asking for reasonable things that help prosecute a crime and asking for unreasonable things.
Good point. Well taken.
That's all.
Yeah, and if they're doing anything to impinge on people's right, for example, to attend the rally, which was legal. I mean, I hated it, but it was legal. There's a big difference between that and people who are breaking into the Capitol. And it just really depends on what they're asking for and where it's leading.
I have no problem with them asking for stuff that was posted publicly, even if it was later pulled down. And I think that's the bulk of it.
It's public.
It's the internal private stuff, I think, probably, well, they have the right to do it. It's a congressional subpoena. It has the weight of law behind it.
Also, sometimes, just to close this off, sometimes things are complicated in this world, and sometimes they're really simple. Yeah. And I feel like we're trying to make this more complicated than it is. And by we, I mean, I don't know, maybe the discussion in the country, right? Like at the end of the day, there was one guy who was the president who told all of his supporters to come down to D.C. on the day that they were going to start to count the electoral votes, told them it was going to be wild, and then marched them down to the Capitol, and in they went. And yeah, there might have been some communication, but I think the danger is that what Congress does is makes this more about the technology companies than about the guy that gave the marching orders.
Point. Actually, that's an excellent point.
I want to push back on that a little bit. I don't know what Congress is asking for from the technology companies, and they should not ask for more than what is legal. And I'm not justifying Congress and certainly not the technology companies, but that's not all the former president did, nor is it all that happened prior. And there was planning of violence that happened prior. These were conversations that were happening. Some are happening private, some are happening publicly, but this wasn't one situation where a president directed his followers to go and it would be wild. And then it just happened to be wild. No, there was premeditation to this.
I do have to love the cluelessness of Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, Louis Gohmert, who's, by the way, the guy who thought the Bureau of Forestry and Land and Forestry Management could move the moon to improve climate change, and other members of Congress who wrote a letter saying to Marissa Mayer, president and CEO of Yahoo, this is 2 days ago, they wrote this letter saying, do not turn over any of our records. Marissa, please. I don't think she has those records. I'll be honest with you.
They can be sure, Marissa.
I'm not arguing for the competence of Congress, and I'm not trying to be rude to Alex either.
They sent it to all the telecom.
I welcome the disagreement.
They were looking for telecom records too, but I think you're right. If the crime is committed, it's not a fishing expedition unless they're asking for every bit of the data. They're saying for these specific people, that's not a fishing expedition. That's an investigation.
Of course, it's an investigation, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it wasn't Facebook and Twitter.
It wasn't their fault. No, I agree.
And if the people who organized on a Facebook group, they would have organized on a Telegram group if they couldn't have been on Facebook. And at the end of the day, they were there on January 6th because the commander-in-chief told them to be there on January 6th. So,
and to be fair, I doubt that Matt Gaetz or Lauren Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote this letter to Marissa Mayer. Some staff, they were writing the same letter to all of the telecom companies. Some staffer probably didn't realize that Marissa Mayer had left Yahoo. And then, in fact, Yahoo had been sold several times since. So, it was just, mail merge. Bad mail merge. Not their fault. Finally, in good news, for humans anyway, a judge has ruled that only humans can get patents. There was a artificial inventor project run out of the University of Surrey, a global effort to get a computer listed as an inventor. They applied for a patent in the United States, but a federal judge ruled that, federal law in the U.S. requires that a, quote, individual take an oath that he or she is the inventor on a patent application, and Judge Leonie Brinkema of Alexandria, Virginia, ruled that no AI can take an oath.
But wait a minute. Does that mean that a human who employs AI to develop a product can't patent that product?
The human can.
Yeah, the human can.
The goal of this was to get the patent in the name of the AI.
Yeah. Okay.
It's all fun and games until the AI shows up in front of the
know.
judge's houses and demands credit for what it did.
Law professor Ryan Abbott, who launched this effort, says we respectfully disagree with the judgment and plan to appeal it, so we haven't heard the last of it. We believe listing an AI as an inventor is consistent with both the language and purpose of the Patent Act. Wow.
AI rights. I mean, those robots have inalienable rights. Yeah.
No AI should ever be forced to wear a skirt. I'm 100% behind that. I agree. Power to the AI. Thank you, Larry Magid. ConnectSafely.org, CBS Radio. Anything else you want to mention or plug?
You can go to Larry's World and read some of my Mercury News columns.
There you go. Larry'sWorld.com.
Larry'sWorld.com. Yeah.
Thank you, Larry. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex Kantrowitz. Don't forget bigtechnology.substack.com for the newsletter, the podcast. What's Always Day One about?
Always Day One is my book about the tech giants. So there's a chapter each on Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. And it's all about how they are led internally, how they how their cultures operate, and how they use artificial intelligence to make room to invent. And it's about their way that the way that they reinvent. So they do come in as if it's their first day. And if you read the book, you'll find out exactly how they do it.
That was, of course, Jeff Bezos' motto to keep Amazon on its toes, is to always act like it's the first day, always day one. Good book. Highly recommend.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
And Dan Patterson, CBS News, technology editor over there. Anything you would like to mention or plug?
No, I plugged all the stuff. Sorry for talking over everybody. Yeah.
No, that's part of the joy of Zoom conversations, of talk radio. Yeah, we can't be polite because of latency and so forth, and I think everybody understands that.
Yeah, excellent. No, this is great. It's always great to join you, Larry. Sorry, Fred yapped Leo and
I
Alex.
Love Fred.
Great
Fred's
to meet you.
my new favorite dog.
The only participant I didn't have any disagreements with.
You guys are great. Alex, we live very close to each other. Let's hang. And Larry, the next time I'm in the Bay, I'd love to grab a coffee and talk radio, man.
Yeah, talk radio from 6 feet apart.
God bless radio.
Sounds
All
good.
four of us are radio lovers. Who would have thought that?
Sure.
Right? We do Twit, not on the radio. You know what? This show is never on the radio. It's only on your internets. We do it every Sunday afternoon after I do a radio show, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern, 21:30 UTC. I mention that because you can watch it live. If you're one of those people likes to know that you're watching at the same time as we're doing it, go to twit.tv/live. There's live audio and video there. One of the advantages, one of the reasons we do it live is because we like the live interaction from our listeners, both via our chat room at irc.twit.tv. I don't know what that is. What are we seeing there, John? There you go. That's something else. That's our Discord server. If you're a member of Club Twit, twit.tv/Club Twit, you can go on in there and post things like this. I don't know what. It's the Android Mark Zuckerberg, I guess.
Yeah,
saying,
they look like Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I am sorry. That was a big mistake, and it was my mistake, and I am sorry. Club Twit is a lot of fun because of the animated GIFs, but you can also join the offline chats at our discourse server, which is twit.community, or twit.social, our Mastodon server. Lots of ways to interact. We appreciate all your thoughts and comments. In fact, the best thing you could do is subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast client and leave us a 5-star review. Let the world know about one of the longest running, if not the longest running, tech news podcasts this week in tech. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. Another Twit is in the can. Bye-bye. Doing the Twit.